On the 13th of January 2024, Impact Wrestling rebranded as TNA Wrestling for the first time in 7 years. This sense of nostalgia has caused two comedians to go back to where it all began, back to the Nashville Fairgrounds, back to the Asylum, to see where it all kicked off. Join them now as they spend the next 114 episodes escaping the Asylum.
You want to talk about TNA? I got your total non-stop action right here, babe.
It's like the Stanley Cup is the hockey play. My kind are athletes. It's like the Super Bowl to football players. This is the biggest joke of the NWA title that I've ever witnessed. The World Series to baseball players.
He's going up. Off the top. His bearings. Look at this club.
Winning Wimbledon for the tennis players. What this belt means to us in our sport, to be the NWA heavyweight champion is the ultimate goal.
What has any of you ever done for the wrestling
The
business?
only former NWA World Heavyweight Champion entered in the Gauntlet. He is unbelievable. Well, this is what it has come down to. We began with 20 competitors. We have narrowed the field to the final two. So for Toby Keith. Toby Keith has come to ringside. Is he an entrant?
This is what I call double non-stop X. Chase anything in a skirt, and I get right up in that dress. This X division is going to be something else, guys.
Wait a minute. What is Jeff Jarrett doing?
Whoever heard of you?
He promised you a historic evening. And yes, we delivered.
Hey, it's LJ, and welcome to Escaping the Asylum, a podcast where two comedians go back through all the early NWA TNA weekly pay-per-views. Now, it takes two people to do this because this is a Herculean task, and so to join me on my journey here, I've brought him down from hypothetical comedy, pause for laughter, Mr. Funky Sam Medina. Sam, how are we doing?
114 episodes, man. We have quite a future in store for ourselves.
Yes. So did you enjoy revisiting TNA in preparation for this episode?
Oh, yes, I really did. This is classic. It's kind of all over the place. It's a little bit unstructured. It's a little bit messy, but it was beautiful, and it's a classic.
So how's it going? You have you got any sort of big gigs planned, or are you sort of focused more on your
I have
podcasting?
a Valentine's Day gig. It's after Valentine's Day though. On the 18th, my wife and I are going to do a Valentine's Day show in San Jose at the Brenham Lounge, which we're pretty excited about.
There you go, people. If you're about in the San Jose area, why not go down and check out my boy Sam and his lovely other half? Yeah, with all the pleasantries out of the way. I mean, normally I'd sort of be queuing up the news here, but as we spent the better part of 3.5 hours doing all the news leading up to this event, I don't think we have to worry about that right now.
Yeah, we'll give Dave Meltzer the day off.
If you want to check out all the things that happened in the lead up to this event, like I said, we spent 3.5 hours talking about it, and it took what felt like a day and a half to edit down into what did make it onto the podcast feed. So feel free to check all that out.
The 3.5 hours, it covers basically from when WCW closes the store to when TNA opens its door, and kind of everything in between.
Yeah, I think there is still a lot of stuff we missed out on. I mean, we mentioned they had to get funding from Health South, but I think I might have missed out the fact that that's because they lost funding from a major bank, because the legal aid said, "Oh, it's all right, I've got this under wraps," and they didn't. There's of course,
right. They had a lot of financial troubles in the beginning, just because people were either trying to steal from them or just lie to them in general.
Yeah, that's
Weird.
That is going to be discussions coming up very soon. I think like the in-demand stuff that comes up from like episode 3 or 4.
Off the very first episode. I think post the first episode, the person that was in charge of, I don't remember, but he was lying to Jeff Jarrett about the viewership, and then that gave Jeff Jarrett a false sense of confidence, and then things got pulled out kind of out from under him.
Yeah, like it's going to be like about episode 3 or so when we sort of look into it. But yeah, there is a lot of shady stuff. It's almost a miracle that they got this sort of they made it past. I mean, well, this is a double taping. But
they're still alive to this day, which is wild to me.
Yeah, especially some of the stuff we're going to look at and go, wow, people were prepared to overlook this. That says a lot for how much a lot of people wanted this company to survive. I think it kind of reminds me a lot of like some of the early AEW stuff. I remember watching that and just thinking, oh, this is really bad.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. I just want to say, I don't know, this is kind of mean, but I say with all due respect, TNA's been on life support more times than Ric Flair. There we go.
Yeah.
No, AEW, like you just said, in the beginning, it kind of was all over the place, and it kind of was like a mishmash of just this random talent, and it just didn't feel like it gelled. And I feel like that's kind of the feeling that we got from this first episode of NWA TNA.
There is a lot of sort of random stuff on here, as we're going to sort of go into very shortly. I do want to try and set the mood, put everyone sort of in the right headspace for what is happening at this time in the world, because it's 21.5 years ago. So I've actually gone and I've done my research, and I have brought up the list of the top films at the box office on this particular week in 2002.
Ooh, exciting.
Well, I say the top films. The number one film from the US and the number one film from the UK. So the weekend prior to this event, over there in the States, you had the original Scooby-Doo film. Do you remember that one? You seen that one?
Oh yeah, with Freddie Prinze Jr. as Fred and Matthew Lillard as Shaggy. I've seen it. It's okay. It's cool. It's crazy because of the cast, because they put a lot of established people in that movie, and they all came together very well. I can't say that I'm a big fan of it, just because it's kind of, it's a little silly and over the top, I guess. But Scooby-Doo is supposed to be that way. But yeah, I do remember that movie.
It was directed by James Gunn of
I did not know that. That's interesting.
At least maybe it was a sequel, but at least one of them was directed by James Gunn, and so it was going to be sort of more in the vein of, well, I was going to say not Guardians, but like his earlier films. Like you had, I think other than Slither, you've got the superhero film with the guy from The Office, which
Superman.
Super, yeah.
Was it? I was just guessing.
The film was called Super. It's the
just Super. Okay.
Yeah, it's stars Dwight from The Office. It's
that's weird. It should be called Super Annoying.
If you watch it, it does sort of, you kind of watch it, go, okay, yeah, no, I can see why he's your choice, and he's trying to save his ex-wife from, it's Kevin Bacon is a local drug dealer and has abducted her, and Ellen Page is like the girl who works at the local comic book shop, and so he's kind of going to her for advice. It's a bit out there. If you're into like the early James Gunn stuff, it is very much that.
Sorry, I stopped listening when you said bacon.
Fair enough. Over here in the UK, I think it's because of the way the release dates worked 20 years ago. Up until I think X-Men 2, there was never such a thing as a worldwide release. So over here in the UK, we were still.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, so Spider-Man.
I figured like when big movies would come out, they would come out there too.
Yeah, just several months later. So for us, it was Spider-Man. So Macho Man Randy Savage was supposed to be on the pay-per-view, but he probably got a bigger payday off this weekend alone.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he got the
charts this week. So the weekend for this, on the top of the US Billboard Hot 100 is "Foolish" by Ashanti. I feel old because I only kind of know who that is.
I know who it is. I'm not a fan. I mean, it's just not my style. I know the name Ashanti.
Yeah. At the top album was The Eminem Show by Eminem.
Hell yeah, I'm down with that. That's a good album. That was 2002. This time,
Yeah. So that was a top album for this week in the States. That I think
wow.
I kind of dropped off of Eminem after that album because he started doing sort of more like remix heavy stuff, which is just not my style at all. But yeah, like the
I
early
feel
albums.
like his next album after the Eminem show is called Encore, and to me that's like his best stuff.
Oh,
Encore.
see, I think I thought that was like a greatest hits. So I don't think
It's not. It's not at all. It's a dope album. Go listen to it. Go call me later. Go listen to it right now. Let's do it later.
I was gonna say I'm kind of in the middle of something.
Let's do it later. It's good though. It's good. Put it on your to-do list.
Okay. So
You could feel nostalgia from like 23 years ago, and you could be like, "Damn, this is all new to me."
I probably have heard some of the
You probably
songs.
have, yeah. I'm sure you've heard at least a few songs.
Top in the chart here in the UK for this weekend in 2002 was Will Young with "Light My Fire." Are you familiar with that version, or
no? Not at all. I'm not familiar with any of that stuff you just said.
It's a cover of
"Light My Fire" to me is a Doors song.
It is the Doors song, but
is it a remake? Is it a cover?
It is. Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of the Pop Idol guys, I think. So
what's the name of the artist?
Will Young.
Will Young. Okay, maybe I'll check it out.
And it's, to be fair, he's one of the better ones. He's one of the better ones of that sort of genre. So it's apparently people who've seen him live are like, oh yeah, it's a really awesome experience to see him do that live. Which I could sort of perform areas. I could see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, seeing almost anybody alive, I feel like the live experience, like even if it's not like your cup of tea, like Ashanti, right? I'm sure seeing Ashanti live would still be a fun experience.
Yeah, and again, the top album over here was, of course, the Eminem show.
Oh, you didn't get that one several months later?
No, music releases I think sort of lined up, but
music travels faster because it's only audio.
I suppose so.
Video. UK just doesn't have the servers to download all the movies yet. We're like, all right, we could download this album today, but this movie is gonna take us like 3 months to download it.
Well, also, it's slightly different formats. You have what is it, NTSC over there, and we have PAL.
I mean, just different, like just laws and different, just entertainment ways. I get it. It's fine.
Because I remember DVDs when they used to have like region coding on, until I found out that.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. They did.
Until I found out most sort of DVD players, there is actually a hidden menu, and if you just find that menu and just type the code in right, you can just set it all to 0 and play anything. Which is why I have a 20-year-old DVD player in front of me that can play DVDs from any country.
That's awesome. I think I knew that too at some point.
Yeah.
But I haven't had a DVD player in like, can't even remember. But you know what's crazy is like, this is probably around the time of my life where I worked at Walgreens and I got my first DVD player.
Yeah, was there any sort of films you sort of just kept playing on it, or did you just grab, whatever sort of? Because I'm trying to think, the DVDs at the time were considerably more expensive than they ended up being.
Well, I mean, now they're like you can go to the store and buy like 3 for $5. Now they're just like cheap as hell. But yeah, no, I mean they were decently priced. I remember recently I discovered when movies were coming out to videotape, right? Like back in like way back when, like Titanic was like 2 tapes. Those movies, when the movies first started coming out on tapes, like in the 80s and stuff, they were like almost $100. They were expensive. And so like back in my day, like when I started getting DVDs, 10, 20, $30 for a DVD, anywhere in that range. That's not terrible. And then I built up a pretty big DVD collection. Now I have these milk crates. I have crates and crates and crates full of DVDs that I just want to get rid of. I have so many and I don't even have a DVD player.
Yeah, I remember we got our first DVD player because my dad was like a big sort of Tolkien guy. So this was around the time Lord of the Rings were coming out. So he'd buy So he'd buy like the Lord of the Rings DVD when it came out, and then like 3 or 4 months later, like the big expanded editions came out. So he'd get rid of that one and just buy the expanded ones. So yeah, that's why we got our first DVD players, and just so we could watch like 10 straight hours of Lord of the Rings. I mean,
why is there a DVD player in the bathroom? I gotta watch Lord of the Rings while I take a poop.
I wasn't quite that back, because those things were expensive back in the day. I remember.
No, they were when they first came out. That's why I worked at Walgreens, because I was able to get an employee discount on that thing. I remember working at Walgreens in my early 20s, and I'm like, how am I ever going to go back to paying full price for things again when I don't work at Walgreens? But here's a spoiler. It's worth not working at Walgreens to pay a little more.
Yeah, I worked at a supermarket chain over here called Sainsbury's. It's just like, it's just, I don't know if I could go back into retail. I've always been.
No, I would never go back into retail.
I've always been in roles that are kind of customer facing, although my last one, at least I didn't have to be nice to them. That was one of the few perks of the job. That and the fact I wasn't given a strict time to be there. So when I got really miserable.
Oh, sweet.
So legitimately, I got to a point where I think the rest of the office were placing bets as to whether they'd see me before lunch. Let's talk about wrestling. Yes, I can. I don't want to broadcast quite how bad of an employee I can be.
Oh yeah.
Yes, we've just spoken.
Let's talk about how bad of wrestling fans we can be.
So we've set the stage for what the world was going for, what was going on in the entertainment world. In the wrestling world, we had. So last week I covered what was happening on Raw and SmackDown. Raw was obviously notable because it was the Raw that Austin walked out. SmackDown, most notable thing that probably happened was Ron Simmons beating Devon Dudley in 7 seconds. That may seem a little weird if you don't know the context, but a month before, Devon Dudley had pinned Triple H in a one-on-one match. Triple H was the number one contender. I'm just sort of thinking, Ron Simmons beat the guy who beat the number one contender. Surely he should be the number one contender. At this point, it had been 5 years since they had a title match. And what's the worst that could happen? I mean, the match could have been bad, but, the match we got instead was pretty damn atrocious. So,
yeah.
It's not like you would have lost
weird.
anything.
Was Triple H? I don't even want to say it at this point. It sounds like he's going after like a demographic, though. Is this around the time he beat Booker T at WrestleMania?
That would be like 9 months after this. This was
okay. Same year though.
No, it was. So this is July 2002. That would be the Mania of 2003. So.
Oh, okay. I see. That makes sense because Booker T didn't come in until 2002. They had to wait a little while before they buried him.
Some would say that supermarket trip with Austin, that kind of buried him just before the Royal Rumble, but
yeah, but also like that is one of the like when you look back at the highlight reels and stuff, that's like one of the biggest moments, that they, a moment in time.
It is just so rewatchable.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was fun. It was fun. I feel like it showed Booker T's range a little bit,
Yeah. Before I go on to the Raw and SmackDown reports, I just want to bring up, we're not going to really go into weekend shows much for this bit here. However, it should be notable that this is a confidential straight after Austin walked out. So, yeah,
did they do a bad piece on Austin, like making him look bad?
Have you not? Did you never see this episode
of
Confidential?
Confidential. I mean, I can't say that I did or I can't say that I didn't. I tried to watch every Confidential that aired, but that was 2002.
I mean, Jim Ross looked particularly hurt by Austin walking out. Just like one of like his last remarks was along the lines of, we do all this just for entertainment. I've had pig crap dumped over me for people's entertainment, and I know Austin's not going to be back next week. I don't know if I'm ever going to be calling Stone Cold Steve Austin match again. And he looked so just hurt that Austin and up and left the way he did.
Yeah. I mean, it was weird. Like looking back on it, Steve Austin has said, I still feel the way that I felt, that it was ridiculous for me to lose to Brock Lesnar in an unadvertised match. But looking back on it, I should have just went to the boss and directly spoke to him about it instead of just taking my ball and going home.
Yeah. I mean, as we discussed on the last episode, the fact that the guy they replaced him with was Bubba Ray Dudley says a lot about. I'm not sure if
That
it does or
spot.
not.
That says a lot about that spot. How much
Yeah.
that spot was respectable. It's like,
Yeah.
do you remember when Rude was on Raw Nitro on the same night? He was in DX and he joined the NWO. And then the following week, they had Harvey Whippleman dressed up like Rick Rude with the suit and the briefcase. And Shawn Michaels goes, that wasn't a hard spot to fill. That's what I feel like. Like, you're putting Steve Austin in this spot where you could put Crash Holly. Like, it doesn't have to be Steve Austin. Why is it going to be Steve Austin? How about like build it up? I agree with Austin on that. Especially when they just plugged in Bubba Ray Dudley.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of like the talent walkout of the last few years, I've sort of looked at and gone, no, that makes sense because you had like the
Sasha
SmackDown with the Sasha Naomi pack a few years ago. There's a few that you sort of look and go, no,
pack.
I completely get that. So this is the first Raw following on from all that Ferrara. This is is that the right word? I don't know. This is the final Raw before King of the Ring. So we kick off with a quarterfinal match between X-Pac and RVD, which RVD wins.
RVD 420.
Yeah, so RVD wins after a distraction from Booker T. Then
Did you know that nobody gets higher than Rob Van Dam?
I'm sure you've tried.
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually a T-shirt that they had in WWE. Nobody gets higher, RVD.
Well, you can get like those wrestling fan sites that do kind of custom tees. This one I got in like a grab bag that was like high flyer, and I just sort of looked at the leaf and I was like, they could have tweaked that to look a bit like Jeff Hardy, and that would have been slightly more awesome, I thought.
Oh yeah,
you just sort of shape it like Jeff Hardy doing the Swanton. Yeah. So Vince does bring up Austin. They try and keep it respectful at this point, which is fair enough. Then we have a match between Jeff Hardy and Raven following an incident between them that happened on Heat. This is really to build up Jeff Hardy face. You'll be facing The Undertaker in a few weeks. I think it might be the next week. Without the next week in front of it, I don't know.
Climb the ladder, make yourself famous.
That's the one. So we have a backstage segment with Goldust and Booker T, where Goldust floats the idea of King Booker.
Wait, what? In 2002, King Booker?
Goldust is apparently the first to say that on WWE TV, albeit I think that's would that be 4 or 6 years before it actually happened?
I think it was 06 when it actually happened.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
We then get Molly. We then get Molly Holly in a segment just to make fun of the fact she's slightly round, which is atrocious 2002 stuff. That sadly, I'm pretty sure there are still some that get that. There's a meeting between the NWO and Lesnar to do with his upcoming match with Booker T. Then we have Chris Nowinski taking on Spike Dudley in a match which Chris Nowinski wins. Say for Spike Dudley from a beatdown from Regal and Nowinski, Bradshaw does a run-in. Then Ric Flair comes out. He discusses about what happened last week and about his match with Austin the week before. And then the glass shatters, and out comes Eddie Guerrero.
Whoa.
Guerrero rightly upset because he's not getting his match with Steve Austin in a week's time. So he runs down Ric Flair. Then Chris Benoit comes out and says, Eddie, come on. You know who you're talking to. And somehow this still ends up with Flair getting beaten down by both of them and Eddie slapping on the figure 4. It does build up to Guerrero versus Ric Flair at King of the Ring, which I guess is not.
Yeah, that's cool, kind of.
It's not the worst consolation
I mean,
for.
it's cool in concept.
Yeah, it's. I mean, Ric Flair in this era is not. I mean, there are worse eras like Ric Flair now. At least,
Although it does, like, as a more an adult wrestling fan now, just the idea of Ric Flair and Eddie Guerrero makes me think about a time in, like, let's say 1996. Ric Flair was the WCW United States champion, and he was upset because he had to work with people like Eddie Guerrero.
it's always interesting to sort of see people sort of looking down on people like that years later are on their level. I remember, I think it's in 2008, Edge and Triple H had like a pay-per-view match, and like the video they show is just like a skip from like SmackDown the week before, and I'm like, oh come on, people, you can do better than that. In 2003, no, in 2002, Triple H once said to Edge, "Oh, maybe you should face me once you've won a few more world titles," and lo and behold, that happened. I was just like,
So, do you watch Botchamania?
I've seen a few clips. Yeah,
On the most
been a few
recent
years.
episode of most recent episode of Botchamania, they were showing some old tweets from The Rock. In 2011, The Rock said Cody Rhodes is a mid Carter for life, and then Cody replied to him and said, "But Rock, what are you saying? You follow me on Twitter?" And The Rock said, "That's because you're my favorite mid Carter."
I don't think The Rock followed anyone on Twitter.
I don't know, but I saw that on Botchamania, and that's from 2011.
Yeah. So the next segment is Chris Nowinski introducing himself to Vince, and at this point, I don't think I mentioned it, but Vince has been getting phone calls from Tony Gurria all night, and basically someone is coming to Raw, and Austin is and Vince is under the impression it's Austin. So Vince is making preparations. Then we get a match between Trish Stratus and D'Lo Brown taking on Crash and Molly Holly. Trish gets attacked by Molly after the match. The next segment, Lita, who is rocking the neck brace, is trying to talk Matt out of his match with The Undertaker next, but that's not happening. Then we get more Vince preparing for Austin's arrival. Then we get Undertaker versus Matt Hardy, which Matt gets squashed pretty quickly. And you have run-ins from Jeff and Raven, of all people, because apparently Raven has an issue with Jeff, which is actually oddly appropriate, because we'll mention this in a few months, but Raven's last match in the WWE is actually against Jeff Hardy.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that either.
No, it's a Royal Rumble qualifier match, which Raven loses, and then he actually does a surprise run-in on the next TNA pay-per-view.
Okay, so TNA starts in June, and he debuts the following January?
I believe so. It will come up obviously when we do that event, but I'm pretty sure it's one of the January pay-per-views. It's quite early on in 2003 he turns up.
I remember his arrival. I just don't remember the time frame of it, but I do remember his arrival.
Vince gets another phone call, but reception's bad. 20 years later, as someone who has had EE for a while, that is something they've still not cleared up. So, final match of this episode of Raw is the quarterfinals match between Brock and Booker T, which has all the NWO at ringside and runs Goldust. And Brock wins following a distraction win from the NWO. There's a beatdown on Booker T and Goldust. And then we go to the final segments where Vince comes out and he says, "Well, I've been waiting all night, but it's finally here." And then Tony Gurria comes out and he's like, "Well, it's not Austin, it's someone else." And out comes The Rock, who cuts a very memorable promo. It's the Austin took his ball and went home, and everyone who is in the WWE should want to be here, because if they don't want to be here, they can get the F out. Do you remember that promo?
Yeah, now that you mention it, I do.
Because it features quite a lot on the match in the Austin Rock match from
where
that
was this
in
time frame of changing to WWF or changing from WWF?
So they changed to WWF on I believe about the 4th of May, and this is Raw from the 17th of June. So
Okay, so that's a pretty established. Get the F out. It's pretty established at this point.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. So that was that episode of Raw, and moving over to the episode of SmackDown. So obviously this would have been taped the night before the TNA event we're covering, but was shown the night after. Kurt Angle finally admitting that he's bald, but he's still not taking the wig off. And then Kurt is one of the things.
Good.
One of the things I don't like about what they did with Kurt Angle is they just let him try and be a tough guy all the time, especially towards the end of that first WWE run. You look at like segments like this and just the goofiness he puts into it, and he makes it work. And it's like, especially some of the stuff they tried to do with him as a serious competitor. It's just like, no, you keep the goofy stuff because
I'm gonna respectfully disagree with you. My favorite Kurt Angle is Kurt Angle, the wrestling machine, with Team Angle, Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin by his side.
That was pretty cool. I mean, even then, there was still like an element of goofiness because he had like.
Dude, there was this promo that he cut one time, my favorite promo ever. He says a line where he goes, "The name of the game is wrestling, and that's what we do." And I'm like, damn, Kurt.
What, the one where it's like, oh yeah, the W in the middle, that's not world. Damn sure entertainment, it's for wrestling, and that's what we do. Yeah, I think I remember that one, yeah. For a lot of that, he had a minor knee injury, so he was on crutches for like.
And he actually, the Team Angle storyline ended when he broke his neck and then left after WrestleMania with Brock.
Yeah.
So it wasn't good for him really because he was really hurt. But I just loved his attitude and I loved his persona and I loved his viciousness. I love Kurt Angle.
Yeah, Kurt is. He is really good. He does have just a couple of like minor flaws that can't deny. He puts everything into his matches, but there is just sometimes he puts too much into his matches, if that makes sense. One thing that particularly irks me about him is the way he lets people kick out of the Angle Slam. I remember, I think it was like a SmackDown episode in like 2005, and Cena kicked out, and Michael Cole's like, "Oh man, no one ever kicks out of that." And I'm like, everyone kicks out of that. I cannot take that finish seriously as a one and done finish because he allowed everyone to kick out of it by that point.
Yeah, it's not a strong finish, but I mean, sometimes he'll hit 2 or 3 times, with it. And then the ankle lock was the devastating one, especially when he would drop and wrap his legs around the person's leg. Then it's over. I don't know if you know this, LJ, but Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker both have only tapped out one time in their entire careers, and that one time was the Kurt Angle.
I think actually Undertaker might have done it twice for him because they did a
maybe. I mean, it's possible that they've. I mean, I don't think he's done it as The Undertaker though.
I think because in a couple of weeks from here they do I don't know if you remember, they did a draw where Undertaker brought him up for the last ride, but Angle slaps on like a triangle choke, and so he went down and was being pinned while the Undertaker was submitting to his triangle choke. So it was a draw.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But either way, I mean, it's only the Kurt Angle.
It is only Kurt Angle, yeah.
Nobody else has made Undertaker or Hulk Hogan tap out.
No, I don't. Yeah, I'm trying to. Well, technically, he lost to Piper by submission, but that was a sleeper hold, so that's not tapping out. Yeah.
Yeah, Piper put him to sleep, and that was. I mean, you're bringing up trauma now because, I mean, as big as an NWO and a Hogan fan as I was, that title should have been on the line that night.
Yeah, if you remember back, that was a contract that Piper had agreed on. So it's like, wow, you are the dumbest babyface of 1996. You agreed to a big match where the title wasn't even on the line.
And they didn't even. It's crazy because like listening to like Eric Bischoff and stuff talk about it, it was like they never promoted it as a title match. And then going into it, it was just like, oh, Piper wins. And then you're like, why doesn't he have the belt? You know, what the hell?
I remember watching that on the network a few years ago. And of course, you've got the match breakdown on the network, with the exception of one match, is everything that's got its own chapter. The one match that doesn't is like you got Benoit versus Jeff Jarrett, and at the time, because of Jeff Jarrett standing, I was like, gee, I wonder which one of these two is the reason that this doesn't have its own chapter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, moving on from Kurt Angle and Hulk Hogan in the opening segment, you have Stacey Keibler and Dawn Marie and Tori Wilson talking about underwear. And again, 2002 women's wrestling, not exactly a banner year for it. First match tonight.
It really wasn't. Women's wrestling, I mean, at this point, women were just like TNA, they weren't really like established as wrestlers. Yeah. And then, I mean, there's not a lot of women's wrestlers in the world right now at this point either. There's a few, but there's not a lot.
Yeah. So next up, first match tonight, you have Rikishi versus Christian, which Rikishi wins, but Christian's foot was on the rope, which leads to Lance Storm coming out to complain because apparently the American referees are biased against the Canadians. So we spoke about this, I think, last week. The un-Americans. So this is like the first sort of seeds of that being sown. You said you quite enjoyed this, and I said it was, the whole thing was cut way too short.
Yeah, it was. They could have went with it. I really enjoyed the un-American storyline.
I think it says a lot that they didn't run any major shows in Canada during the time that storyline was going on.
Interesting.
Well, I think I remember.
Well, I mean, Canada didn't like them after the whole Bret Hart fiasco. Yeah,
that's true. But yeah, you'd think, because like in Canada, Christian would probably be quite well received, and Storm's loved over there, and I mean, Test is. But with
also
them.
they're heels, so you don't want them to be well received at the same time.
Yeah, but
Edge, I think, was a babyface at the time.
Yeah, Edge was a babyface at the time. Yeah, because it was a year later they went over to Canada and Edge was booed out the building that SummerSlam. But we made.
Wow.
It was quite. I will go into it when we'll touch on it next year. But yeah, Edge was not a popular babyface in 2003, especially in Canada, which is quite depressing given that I think it was a Toronto show as well.
That's funny. Yeah, I do want to look more into that when we get there.
So yeah. Next up, you've got an interview with Triple H. He's facing Billy Gunn later in the evening after attacking with the sledgehammer the week before. Then you have an interview with Nydia and Jamie Noble. They are facing Billy Kidman for the number one contendership for the Cruiserweight title, which Jamie Noble wins. He's rocking the mask of the Hurricane, which he stole last week, and Hurricane comes out and steals it back. You have Billy Gunn taking on Triple H, and I don't think I need to tell you who wins that one, do I?
Yeah, I don't think so. Which one of those two are still wrestling to this day?
No, it's crazy because his Gunn's close to 60, I think. If he's not 60 already. And it's like, I don't know what he's on, but I would like some of that.
I don't know if you are aware of this, because I know you don't really follow modern day wrestling very closely. But Billy Gunn is currently 1/3 of the AEW Trios Tag Team Champions.
With the Acclaimed, right?
Yes, correct.
Yes, yeah. I'm kind of. I think I'd seen sort of that when that sort of first happened, because yeah, I do really enjoy the Acclaimed stuff, and
he reunited with his sons recently.
Oh, that's cool. His sons, they've got a lot of potential as well. You can tell that they've been shown what to do by someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah. But it's not an AEW thing. We're trying to focus on TNA, I say, as I go back to talk about WWE SmackDown.
It's funny because I've always said, like, a few years ago, the problem with Dolph Ziggler was that he was more Billy Gunn than Shawn Michaels. and now Billy Gunn's sons are trying to be more Shawn Michaels than Billy Gunn.
Yeah, I can see that, especially with I think it's Austin. I think I can see where you're coming from, because they also have like the
They
early
were very
90s short
similar.
Sean.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were very similar tights to the old school 92, 93 Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah. So we have a King of the Ring qualifier with Jericho taking on Big Valbolski, because apparently we're doing a whole string of matches where you kind of know who's going to win going in.
Yeah.
Actually, at the end of the Triple H match, Kurt Angle ran in and the Undertaker ran in, and there was a whole thing. And basically, Undertaker's like, "I want Kurt in the main event." So, yeah, we have a Kurt Angle Undertaker match, which in the early 2000s always turned out to be so much of a waste of time. I notice you're not disagreeing with me on that, so we'll move on, shall we? But yeah, I mean, Undertaker at this time is just, I think you said it last week, just how horrible he was at this point.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of his of being human, you know?
Yeah. Jericho beats the Big Valbolski.
Oh, I'm so surprised.
In the final King of the Ring quarterfinal, we have Test taking on Hardcore Holly. Test actually gets a good reaction for winning this one. There's not really a lot to say about that, other than Test is like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna what this company's all the boots," because he was Canadian and he had a big boot finish. Yeah. See, he could be. No, he couldn't be funny, but he could try. And we've got to give him points for that. Event time is Undertaker facing Kurt Angle. With a distraction from Triple H, Kurt Angle pins the Undertaker.
Woo.
That's SmackDown. I tried to argue against you with this last week, but you said I don't think they really care about the other promotion, and the way they're booking SmackDown at this point definitely goes in your favor with that.
I feel like at this point, like WWF or E or whatever they are, they're like, this giant elephant, and TNA is just like a fly that landed on it. And so it's like, you don't even feel it. You don't even notice that that's there.
Yeah, I think there is still an element of there being, they are concerned, because we said last week that Barnett basically got signed up, and I think next week is the day or two that Russo works there, which we'll cover next week.
I feel like the first few episodes of this TNA Asylum, the Asylum era, is like an outlaw mud show with a TV deal in a way.
Yeah, there is a feeling of that. I can see where you're coming from. Yeah. And so finally, it is the roll call of champions.
All right.
The champions for this week in 2002 are, starting with, we're just talking WWE, so let's just go with the WWE ones first. WWE.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, there's no champions in TNA yet.
No, so this is a roll call. So this is all the
around
top
the
champions.
world.
Yeah, so in the States, we're going WWE. We've got Undertaker, the current WWE champion, and the current WWE tag champs are Billy and Chuck. I'm only doing heavyweight.
Speaking of Billy Gunn.
Yeah, I'm only doing heavyweight and tag team champions because there's too many otherwise. I'm going to bring up the AWA title because it blew your mind last week, so I'll bring it up again. Evan Courageous, still the AWA champion at this point in 2002. No reaction to that?
Nah, not really.
Over here in the UK, main promotions are All Star Wrestling, which is still around. Doug Williams is their champion at this point. We have the Frontier Wrestling Alliance is going strong at this point, with Flash Parker as the heavyweight champion and UK Pitbulls as the tag champs. And in NWA Hammerlock, we have current Performance Center trainer Johnny Moss as the UK Hammerlock champion.
When at one point did old Dougie Boy come to the US to TNA? Like 04, 05?
I think it's later than that. I think it's like
Yeah,
2007,
I guess it was later
2008.
than that because Nick Aldis was on it by his side. Um, I never heard of him really until he came to TNA, but Doug Williams is good. He's really
Yeah,
good.
yeah. I mean, he's with ROH for a couple of years before that. Actually, there is a show. I don't know if we're going to. I mean, I don't know if we're going to do the whole show, but it's going to be we're going to talk about it on a Patreon because it features a TNA match on. But it's a
I feel
weekend.
like wait, was that?
So yeah, it's like a weekender show. It's basically like 16 promotions in a tournament. So TNA is one of those promotions, and I think Doug is
Wow.
Well, no, it's Nigel who's representing ROH, but Doug is. It's around the time Doug is quite well featured in ROH.
Nigel was good too.
Yeah,
But I feel like Doug Williams, like when it's all said and done, Doug Williams is very underrated.
yeah, it's such a good dude too. It's interesting. He's known mostly for technical wrestling, but like the wrestling that interests him to watch mostly is like more sort of brawling heavy, sort of Undertaker Austin type stuff. But he just
Oh,
doesn't.
interesting. That's what he favors. That's he prefers to watch.
Yeah, but he just feels that there's something about him that it fits more. His style of wrestling fits the way he looks more than if he was to try that sort of style of wrestling. Which I mean, it is a sign that he's sort of got. He's a sign to like the mental acumen he's got behind wrestling that he knows what is expected of him, and he doesn't sort of.
Yeah, he knows his strengths.
Yeah,
Because he doesn't prefer technical wrestling doesn't mean like he's not good at it.
yeah,
I
but
couldn't see I couldn't see Doug Williams though main eventing Monday Night Raw against like Steve Austin, like a brawling kind of situation. I couldn't see that.
yeah. One thing about Doug that I find really weird to think of is before this time his nickname was the Anarchist, and I don't know how much of like Doug Williams you've heard him speak, but
Not much.
very sort of proper and well delivered, and you just sort of
Yeah,
listen,
he is.
and it's just like that's not what I picture an anarchist sounding like. Yet you actually go back and watch some like his older anarchist stuff. There is something to it. It's hard to sort of picture now. It's like with Tony. I have a similar thing with like Tony Storm now, where I knew her when she was coming up through All Star, or I worked with her a couple of times when she's coming up through All Star, and to see like the sort of punk rock aesthetic she had when like she went to AEW is such a weird disconnect. It's like it's the same person, but it's just the same person who looks so completely different from how I knew her. I just can't sort of square that circle. It's
Oh
just
my gosh. I want to tell you this thing about Tony Storm real quick. I was watching AEW Dynamite a few weeks ago and she was on commentary and it was picture in picture. They were at commercial, but like it was the version where they were still you could still watch it.
yeah,
And Excalibur was talking about John Moxley. And he said earlier in the night, John Moxley defeated Jeff Harvey. And Taz laughed. But Tony Storm go in her character where she's like from the 50s.
yeah.
She says, "Oh yes, Jeff Harvey." And I thought that was the greatest response. That was so funny. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved that moment.
Guessing that's a reference to Adam Lee, which
I think he said it by accident. I really do.
yeah, I was going to say because I mean, from what sort of come out recently, Adam Lee's had like concussion problems going back to like his football days, and it's like, oh, so some of the slip ups from his time there might be tied to that. It's like, oh, okay, some of the things I said back then, I kind of feel bad about.
Yeah, I feel like Excalibur did not do that to make fun of anybody. I feel like he just said it by accident and they just rolled with it and it was perfect. Because Taz even called him Mike Adamley after he said it.
Yeah, no, that's it.
He's like, "Are you Mike Adamley under that mask?"
So move back to the roll call of champions in All Japan. The Triple Crown champion is Genichiro Tenru. I don't know if I said that right.
Yeah, Tenru.
Yep. And the All Japan Tag Champs are Keiji Muto and Teo Kia.
I mean, I know those names. I know who they all are, so that's good.
Yeah, in New Japan, the New Japan World Champion is Fuji Nagata, and the New Japan Tag Champs are Shoten. Oh, the team is called Choten, and that is Hiroshi Tenzan and Masahiro Chono.
And those are the NWO guys too. Wait, did you just say that?
Yeah, I do recognize Masahiro Chono as a NWO guy. Yeah,
Tenzan too. Tenzan joined them.
Okay.
There was a situation where Sonny Ono brought Tenzan in to fight against to fight against Chono, and then he ended up being friends with them.
Fair enough. I was watching the Wrestling with Regret YouTube channel the other day, and the guy was doing a review of the January 2000 WCW pay-per-view. I think it's sold out. And for some reason, in the middle of a Vampiro interview, Masahiro Chono just shows up, and it's never mentioned again. It's like, what was happening there? I mean, there was a lot of things on that pay-per-view that were like, what was going on? But that is just one of those things of, so you've flown a guy all the way across the world to just essentially walk on and wave at people.
Wow.
It was WCW in 2000. I was going to say not a lot making sense, but that was the time, I think, that might even have been Jerry Jarrett looking around that time, because that was between Vince Russo eras. Finally, moving on to Mexico, with the AAA World Champion being Hector Garza and the AAA Tag Champs being Chessman and Electroshock. And CMML at this point are using the National Mexican Championship as their main title, which is held by Universo 2000. The tag team champs are Los Guerreros de Inferno with Rey Bucanaro and Ultimo Guerrero as tag team champions. And you're going to hear those names a lot because they are pretty much tag team champions for another year and a half, looking at my notes here. But it's Mexico Championships. They can go months and months without being defended. So people just hold those things for years.
And then quick note on Hector Garza. I didn't realize that he was a AAA world champion. He was in and out of TNA quite a bit later on, I think like 05, 06. And seeing him was always pretty fun. He was always really good. And now his nephew, who went in TNA for a minute as Garza Jr., he's in WWE.
Yeah, you say in and out. There was only a couple of spells, but the reason he ends is actually it's going to be quite an interesting discussion point, because there was like a whole protest movement saying, there was a controversial trial at the time. It's like, well, if that guy's innocent, then so is Hector Garza, and that was, yeah. Well, we'll get to that, I believe, in it's about mid 2005. We'll get to that. But yeah, that is the World Call Champion. So that is set up for what the world in entertainment and wrestling was like in 2002, and more specifically, the Pacific Week that TNA kicked off from Huntsville, Alabama. A podcast called Escaping the Asylum. We've not even made it into the asylum yet. So technically,
how much you want to bet that Conrad Thompson was there in Huntsville, Alabama?
He was. He actually
he was.
I think he made it to at least half of the TNA shows. I think he said on one of the clips I've seen. But yeah, so this
is probably half his size. Oh, I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna sidestep that one.
I love you, Conrad. I'm just kidding.
Someone's got to. So yeah, so this is so they did double taping for this show so they had 2 dark matches beforehand, which
I saw that. It was just weird because like, they go, oh, the first match in TNA history was a Flying Elvis. Says, well, that's not true.
Yeah, so we'll actually go into the dark matches next week, because they do get edited into the pay-per-view for next week. But yeah, so they did the 2 dark.
Do really?
They do, yeah.
I didn't know that. That's the original AEW Dark right there.
Yeah, so yeah, they get edited into the pay-per-view next week. So then they do the main pay-per-view, and then they do tape the rest of the pay-per-view for next week. So the way it's set up is pay-per-views, they will always be under 2 hours because the way the taping works is they've got an hour 58 of pay-per-view time and then 2 minutes to reset. So they can do a replay immediately afterwards. I think because you have too big a country out there, and they have it spaced, you have 4 different time zones. So I think the final time zone, you only get the replay, you don't get the live.
Okay.
Unless I think that's how it works. I don't know. You have too much. You are too big a country. That's
You're talking
what
about
I'm trying to say.
pay-per-view?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do replays. They do replays, and they played it
Yeah.
on Tuesday or something.
Yes, but yeah. So they did. But the way that it worked here was they would also have a replay immediately afterwards for the.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Well, before I actually get to the event itself, we do actually. You can actually. Those listening, you can get in contact with us via either our social media or emailing etapod@proton.me. In fact, actually, on the socials the other day, did put out any thoughts anyone had, and I had one person reply, which
All right, one person, hell yeah.
hey,
Hey, one person is better than 0 people.
That is true. So I'm going to bring it up right now. Richard White sort of, chimed in with his thoughts on sort of early TNA. And we love Richard Wright over here. He's a open mic promoter. I know you probably have the same thing out there. You have got open mics just in a basement somewhere that has like 0 to 3 audience. He runs one of
a coffee shop, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, he runs one of those, but it's like everyone's favorite like open mic in a cold basement with 0 to 3 audience. There is just something about the night that's fun. I've done other nights at that venue and they're not the same. There is just something about the way Richard runs his. It's just a great one to go in and just be like, okay, I think this might probably fail horribly, but at least it's the right atmosphere for it to fail horribly in. Richard wrote in just to say he didn't see like the event at the time because I don't think it actually broadcast over here. To like I said the other day, until we got the wrestling channel in like 2004, I don't think we actually got the TNA pay-per-views. But he remembers going online the next day to read all the results. He was a big Jarrett fan at the time. I'm not going to knock that because I think Jarrett is quite underrated. I've seen a couple of the things he did when he sort of got into AEW, and he's one of the more entertaining aspects out there. He still missed WCW. I think to this day we all do, and he loved the history of the NWA, so he's very excited, just to see where this new promotion came from. I think that's sentiment we all sort of share to a degree. I think the NWA history is possibly part of what drew me to sort of stick around watching what I could get over here. What are your thoughts? Do you think did the sort of NWA history sort of do anything for you at all?
Yeah, it did. Having the title and the NWA initials, I feel like gave it some legitimacy out the gate. Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, that's a very short mailbag for this week. But again, you can hit us up on all the socials, ETA TNA Pod, except for Facebook, where we're ETA TNA Pod #1, because
heck yeah, Ichiban.
Yeah. So Richard, right there, talking about the legacy of the NWA, and who doesn't want to leave a legacy? Hell, if you ignore everything else we've got online right now, this could be argued to be our legacy, and you want to drag it out. You want our legacy to hold up as long as possible, and there's only really one way to do that. That is to join our Patreon at patreon.com/ETATNA pod, like pretty much everything else except for Facebook, which is ETATNA pod 1. For £4 a month, you can have as a little post show that we do where we sort of discuss the show that we have just discussed and discuss how it sort of held up 21 and a half years later. That's a bargain. That's like £1 for every one of our thoughts. I mean, I know traditionally it's a penny, but we're offering you some quality insight, I feel here.
I feel like each thought weighs £1 too.
Yeah, that works. I'll go with that. And you know what? If you're going on, it's £1 for every show. Technically, yeah, every 13th show is free because it's £48 a year, but it's 52 weeks in a year. Think about it. We're almost giving it to you, I think.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Yeah, we also have the £6 tier, which is just easy access, early access. They both start with E and end with Y, but yeah, it's early access to all our events. You can have them all, instead of having to wait till Wednesday afternoon, you can have them all Monday morning. Check us out on your commute to work, which, if it's a long commute to work, yeah, it will probably hold up for a couple of days at least. We seem to have gone a bit already, and we haven't even started on the pay-per-view. Though we will be adding further tiers. We recently recorded TNA today, where Sam went through the recent TNA pay-per-view with me, and I gave my thoughts on his review, which mostly was a lot of tangents, but a lot of interesting tangents. I feel if you have enjoyed our banter so far, it is just more of that. So that tier I'll probably be putting up in the next week or so, and we will be doing a higher tier than that, which will include more event reviews, and there will be other aspects which I'm going to be straightening out over the next few days. So keep an eye out for that. On with the pay-per-view. The intro itself is there's a statue of two Greek,
a naked dude.
Two Greeks.
Is he naked?
Wrestling. I believe they are. Yes. I'm actually there's an interesting story about it. Basically, it's the same. It's a statue that Jerry Jarrett bought when he was young, and he filmed an intro with that for Memphis TV, because where it's like a regional territory, you'd have people switching in and out, and so rather than having intros with people that might not necessarily be there very long and having to sort of change it up every few months, he was like, well, look, people will look at that and think, okay, that's wrestling, and make that the focus of like his TV intros and not have to change it out.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And it was a good intro because for that point, right? The fact that nobody's really established as like gonna be here long term. So let's not like put them in the intro because they might just be out the door soon. So I do agree with that. And that's good. That's good. Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so intro goes from black and white and literally explodes into color as the TNA sort of logo comes out of the screen. And
that's a good representation of the old era breaking into the new era in a way, right? Like the old guard, because Jerry Jarrett's the old guard and Jeff Jarrett is the new guard as far as promoters go. And so in a way, they're kind of breaking that barrier there, and they're bringing the old school into the new school.
Yeah, there are a couple of audio hiccups here because you can hear the ring announcer counting the audience in.
No.
And then his audio gets counted. They sort of bring his audio down too late, and so you kind of miss the welcome to part of welcome to TNA. Welcome to the first show of TNA Wrestling.
I mean, that was probably more for the audience in the building anyway.
But it's one of those. I don't think I noticed it the first couple of times I sort of saw the show, but when for some reason it did stick out when I sort of putting together this intro. I also have noticed the pyro. They shot that to look really good though. For a small set, they've really kind of gone all out.
Yeah, and I feel like the stage looked nice, and it was a weird concept to me at the time that they had two different entrances, one's for the babyface and one's for the heels, and that took a little bit of time to getting used to because it looked really weird. But in the long run, I think that was a good concept to kind of introduce into wrestling if they were the ones that introduced it, because they're the first time I saw it.
It's been used in territories. I mean, the Invasion shows had that. Especially, I remember.
Yeah, you're right. The WWF WCW Invasion show did have that style. You're right about that. But it was a one-off. It wasn't like an established thing, right?
Yeah, I don't think they did it for the SummerSlam, but they definitely did it for the.
I don't know. I was at the SummerSlam. They did not.
Yeah. Okay.
I got to see Jeff Hardy RVD ladder match live in person, second row on the balcony.
Oh, you could probably sort of touched Jeff Hardy at some points during that match. Then he sort
Yeah,
of
RVD high-fived me. Nobody gets higher, you know?
Yep, his arrest record certainly attains to that.
And that, my friends, is a callback.
So the first face on the show is that of Don West, who G's up the crowd before introducing Ed Ferrara. Ed comes out in a leather jacket.
Oh my gosh, with his big old dreadlocks.
Yeah, I've just said he looks ridiculous.
He looked ridiculous. Come on, Ed, have some class.
He says something about TNA and Tiande before throwing to Mike Tenay ringside, who runs down what we'll be seeing on the show and goes over the rules.
Holy moly! You know, I just realized.
What's that?
Mike Tenay's name is almost TNA.
You've
Tenay.
never noticed that before.
I never did it until you just said Tenay.
Okay.
If you pronounce TNA, it would be Tenay. Oh my gosh, that's insane.
So as the others sit on the announce table, it looks kind of like the invite said smart casual, and they all interpreted it slightly differently. Ed makes a comment about how the main event will be every man for himself, just like in real life. And you know what? I don't have this written down, but I'm going to say this because sod it, it's my podcast. I would be really harsh about Ed Ferrara here, but reading reviews, putting this together, I saw a really entertaining quip where someone said Ed Ferrara called himself the most influential man in wrestling, and I had to Google him. But still, the fact that Ed Ferrara is sitting there going, oh yeah, this main event is every man for himself, you know, just like life. That's how I made it. And I'm just sort of sitting there thinking, you know, you made it because you're there carrying the papers for Vince Russo. And the fact that he has the nerve to say that on live TV.
I like Ed Ferrara. I used to listen to him a lot on the MLW podcast network. I think he had a podcast where he was a frequent guest or something. But I like him. I like his ideas and his concepts and kind of his views on wrestling stuff. I just feel like he should have looked a little more. I don't know. He didn't look like he should have been on TV. And the things he did, like, I don't think it's the first episode where, like, you know, he was sex crazed and trying to be like over the top Jerry Lawler. I just don't think his character should have been on television.
Yeah, he's really a lot of my notes. I'm running down his commentary. No. We get thrown to JB, who's in the ring looking like he just came from an audition for the newest sort of Backstreet Boy with his bleach blonde hair and the t-shirt he's wearing. 2002 was a different time.
Hey, JB does not look any different in 2024.
It's easy to make fun of the guy, but no one, especially when he was in TNA, worked harder than he did. He was really underappreciated by all the higher ups.
You know where he is currently? You do, right?
Is he still with WWE or is he?
Yeah, he's with WWE. He's just doing what he did always, but he's doing it for WWE now.
Well, I mean, he's not doing like when like TNA was sort of at the Zenith here in the UK. Every sort of like 5 to 6 months, he'd run like these big fan parties where.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, he sort of did it off his own back as well. You know, they get like a nice sort of venue. And
he's a nerd. When we went to Orlando, I have a big story I'll tell at some point. But one thing that he told us, because we're from San Jose, California, one thing that he told us was that he met his girlfriend in San Jose at an independent show. So then we're like, yeah, you big nerd. I'm just kidding. We didn't say that, but he's a nerd.
Yeah,
I like JB. I like JB. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, there's an ECW documentary which is narrated by him, and he sort of says, "Oh yeah, I remember once I was at an ECW show, and I had to sort of hide because I sort of looked across, and there was a Turner exec at the same ECW show who, if you'd have seen me, would have fired me."
I remember that story. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's here to introduce the legends. First out, we have Harley Race, the 8-time NWA champ. Mike lists off all the people who he beats for those titles. Ed says something stupid, a statement I feel will be repeated many times as he opens his mouth over the next few shows. Dory Funk came out next. One of the men who Harley beat for his one of his NWA titles. He also held various versions of the NWA tag belts. I'll probably go into this in a couple of weeks, but the NWA tag belts featured in this promotion are not the original NWA tag belts because there aren't original NWA tag belts. They're regional titles up until 1992. But he had one version of those belts with Terry. Also, they're the only team of brothers to hold the NWA World Title. Interesting factoid I just thought I'd throw out there. He's dressed like a coach in an Underdog sports flick, sporting his training school T-shirt and a whistle. I just want to say for the record, I never used to think him and Terry looked alike, but as he comes out here, he really looks a spitting image of his brother. Next out, we have
I think they got more looking like the older they got.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy is now, like Bret Hart, the older he gets, the more he looks like Stu.
Yeah, I can see that. It's odd how sort of DNA looks like that. It's like, I remember someone trying to say, "Oh yeah, I'm sure Shane McMahon's adopted." And I'm like, "Have you seen him standing next to Vince?" I mean Stephanie as well. Just sort of like
they both look just like Vince.
When you sort of see like that wedding, the test wedding segment, look at the way she reacts in that, and that's just pure Vince. Just sort
have you seen Shane's son? Because Shane's son plays college football now, and he looks just like Vince. It's insane. I would be surprised if Vince would have followed him or something. No, I'm just kidding. But those genes are strong. He looks just like Vince.
Speaking the last time I think I saw Shane's son was the WrestleMania 20 intro.
Yeah, when he was like 11 or something, 10 or 11. Probably not even that. Probably like 7.
No, that would be 20 years ago. So he was a baby in his father's arms.
Yeah, because he's probably like, he's in college now. College football player.
So Jackie Fargo is out next. A bit of a local legend around the Tennessee area and the surrounding states, rocking the strut that will be ripped off by someone who'll be showing up later. Mike points out he's a first ballot Hall of Famer in the Observer Hall. Ed pleads ignorance to what that means. And under the terms of kayfabe, I'm really unsure about how to react to that. I mean, the Observer exists, but mentioning it sounds kind of like someone like Robert Downey Jr. bringing up Empire magazine in the middle of an Avengers film. Maybe that's just me. It's like, I think AEW are bad for that as well. They bring up like Observer reviews with star ratings, and it's just like, no, that you don't need to do that in the middle of your program, because your star rating is the quality of the match. Whereas on your program, it's supposed to be wins and losses matter, not little snowflakes. But instead, the little snowflakes matter, not whether they win or lose.
Tony Khan recently compared their matches to WWE's matches on a website called Cage Match.
Yeah,
and he was kind of the laughing stock of the industry for a minute. I mean, he's kind of still is. He's silly, but that's what we're talking about right now. I can go on and on. I can do an entire podcast about how silly Tony Khan is, but that's not neither here nor there.
But I mean, it's a thing that's just come up. It's not just like AEW that does it. I've seen there's like a promo between like Cena and Reigns from about nearly 10 years ago, where Cena's like, "Oh yeah, I always bring better matches than you do," and it's like, that's not what you should be saying on TV. Surely you should be talking.
No, that's okay. That's okay. You can have good matches. John Cena has a good track record. Like if like somebody like I don't know, Bob Holly would have said it, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Cody Rhodes back in those days, it's a different story. But I think John Cena can get away with that.
Maybe
because he wins.
Yeah, I suppose if you look at it that way, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I win, and because he doesn't have to say that I win, because everybody knows that he wins, right? But he's like, I got the best matches around here, and he wins.
Yeah. Next out is Bullet Bob Armstrong. We mentioned how Brian can't get to the first show on the pod last week, but at least his dad made it, and the fans seem to really appreciate that, actually.
All right, Bullet Bob.
Yeah. Corsica Joe and Sarah Lee are out next, a couple from the 50s and 60s of territory wrestling. There's not much to say. I did do a quick Google, and Corsica does have a short Wikipedia page, and Sarah is mentioned on there. I think it says a lot that the announcers and JB both very quickly moved on from that pairing. Next out is the NWA executive Bill Barons, who crops up a couple of times throughout this show as kind of the authority figure, I guess.
He shouldn't be on TV either.
They rotate through a lot of authority figures over these first few months. Speaking of authority figures they rotate through, this next guy.
But you know what, though? That's okay that they cycle through authority figures, because there's already established the fact that the NWA has a board of directors. So, like, any one of those people can come and be an authority figure.
Yeah. So this next man is will be briefly an authority figure for a couple of weeks. So it's so memorable, it's not even mentioned on his Wikipedia page. But he's the last man of the Legends, and he comes out carrying the NWA World Title. It is Ricky Steamboat, and he looks really good here. He gets in the ring, and the crowd, they even start a small sort of Ricky chant. Before I move on, what are your thoughts of putting this segment on here in the pay-per-view, starting out?
I was just actually thinking about that before you mentioned it. I feel like this should have came a little bit later. I feel like we should have established ourselves as total nonstop action in the beginning, because if I'm tuning in for the first time, I think that the total nonstop talking.
Yeah,
it was a good segment. Don't get me wrong, because they established, we'll get to it. They established what they needed to get to, but I feel like we should have came out the gate with some action, and we should have had that 6-man tag first.
Yeah, I mean that was actually the plan, because that's where I'm sort of going with this. You're completely right. It does kind of sort of slow the process down. This could have done better in like the second or third segment, but we did mention that they did 2 dark matches. In one of those dark matches, someone broke the ring.
What I just thought of? I'm sorry, I thought of this, and I feel like it would be robbing the audience if I didn't say it. This first segment made me think total nonstop arthritis.
Yeah, with a couple of the guys in there, it does weirdly. With 2 of these people, we'll actually have matches in the not near future that we will be covering.
Excellent.
Dory Funk, it will be a Patreon, him against Jeff Jarrett in a title match. I've got to see if I can still find the footage for that. But as long as I can still find the footage for that, that will be up on Patreon. I think it's about in 18 months' time, but it is something we'll cover in the future. And then
was that on TNA or was that somewhere else?
That was on the Funkin' Controversy TV show.
Okay, because I don't remember that happening. Okay.
So no, it was like a local Texas station that it would have aired on.
Excellent. That's cool. I'm excited about that. I don't think I've ever seen a Dory Funk Jr. match.
Well, you've seen the 1996 Royal Rumble, is in that.
Oh, you're right.
And wasn't he Hoss Funk?
Yeah, but he was Hoss Funk. Yeah, he was.
But yeah, no,
because Vince doesn't like juniors. Vince hates the word junior.
Yeah, apparently Lou Albano knew that quite well. So a lot of the time he'd be like, Vinny Jr. just to sort of get under Vince's skin, which I think is brilliant. The reason this is actually on first is because in one of those dark matches, like I said, they broke the ring. If you actually look,
oh, what interesting!
If you look when
good old, I'm so glad Frank Parker was there, man. Good old Frank Parker. He's awesome.
If you sort of think back, if you actually look when like the pyro's going off, all the ropes are sort of swinging because I'm guessing all the ratchets are off under the ring. And if you look when a couple of the guys are coming down to the ring, when you look at the couple of the guys sort of walk to the ring, you can actually see all the crew sort of trying to get like the ratchets and everything sort of tightened up. That's the reason.
I didn't know that. I never knew that.
Yeah, so that's the reason.
I don't think I heard Jeff. I don't remember Jeff even talking about that on the podcast. That's crazy.
I think he did mention it on there.
Maybe he did. Yeah,
because it's mentioned on the year 1 DVD as well. But yeah,
that's crazy.
But that's why this segment's on first. Otherwise, yeah, it would have.
And they're live, so they can't go push it back 15 minutes.
Yeah, but yeah. So by the time obviously everyone's got in the ring, they sort of got it fixed. But yeah, if you actually watch it back, there's a couple of shots where you can sort of see them coming up to the ring, and the ring is just surrounded by all this, by the entirety of their ring crew. Like right at the start, as the pyro is going off, you can see one of the Harris brothers sort of diving down the side of the ramp to run off and get something from the back.
Wow, that's crazy. Good old Ron and Don.
Yeah, last week, but Dusty Rhodes was contacted about being a part of that Legend segment, and at the time, for context, Dusty Rhodes was running Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling in Texas, and it wasn't like a massive success. It was maybe making a couple of grand a show off of it.
No, Dusty was not doing well financially at this time in his life. I'm surprised he didn't take that booking, because eventually he got work from TNA, and that was like kind of a blessing for him. So I'm surprised he didn't take that booking.
Well, it's not that he didn't take the booking; it's that he just sort of looked at it and went, "Well, my appearance fee is $5,000, and you're doing a double taping, so that'd be $10,000." Um, that's the reason Dusty Rhodes is the Legends Parade at the start.
Yeah, actually, it's weird because I was watching the most recent episode of TNA earlier today, and I was actually thinking about that because that's what they do. They tape a month worth of shows at once. So, like for example, right, Dolph Ziggler, Nick Nemeth, and I'm like, do they pay him for one show or do they pay him for 4 shows, right? But then you go, well, technically, regardless of how many tapings we're doing, we're doing a live wrestling show, a one singular live wrestling show, which is being recorded and broken up to multiple television, appearances, whatever. But it's still one wrestling show, so you're still getting one payday, probably.
Okay, so the way I know it works on certain indie shows is if guys are doing more than one match, especially established guys, it will generally, the way it works is you generally get your flat rate plus half. The theory being you're not necessarily doing double the work because you're still got to make the effort to get to the show, and then you're taking that time out your day, and you're going to be leaving at the same time. But once you're on the show, you're doing twice a week. Now,
That
some
makes
people,
sense. Yeah. Right.
yeah,
Because, like, for example, I just heard that Sarah Logan, Valhalla, is quoted to have said, I wrestle for free, but the payment is for me to travel.
yeah.
You know,
So yeah, the theory is they don't pay you as much for the second match because you're already going to be there for that
makes
time.
sense. But then you're Dusty and you'll have no matches and you have
Yeah.
2 talking appearances,
I mean,
Why
some
pay you
people,
$5,000 again to talk again?
yeah. I mean, some people would argue that every time you go in for have a match, you're putting your neck on the line, which is true.
Yeah,
just,
I mean, that's true too.
just ask like Michaels and Austin and people like that and
Kurt
Edge
Angle,
who had
Page.
their necks injured by people who were notoriously safe workers, and it's just things happen. So some people
And
would say,
the king of that list, unfortunately, is Bret Hart.
yeah.
Well, he wasn't a neck, he was a concussion, but Goldberg and all.
A lot of people say it was the kick. I think it was the figure 4 around the ring post. If you look
You
at
know what? Actually, Conrad, I just listened to a podcast. I never realized that, but that's what Conrad Thompson said too. That the figure 4, usually on the figure 4 around the ring post, the other person will hold Brett's leg, and that gives him a way to have leverage to hold himself up. When he did to Goldberg, his head straight went to the ground because Goldberg didn't hold him up.
It wasn't the ground. It actually bounced off the ring post. You actually watched it.
Ring post? Ouch.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just that combined with catching that kick, because he catches that quite soon after. So yeah, the two together just that's probably what.
It was a recipe for disaster, and unfortunately, he's my favorite of all time. And it was really bad for his career to end that way.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite all time. I actually got my Hitman sunglasses in front of me, and
nice.
And he actually signed them for me, which is quite nice.
Wow.
Because I only had the money for one thing to get signed, so I was going to get the book signed. He's like, I'll steal your glasses as well. Oh, that's awesome.
Imagine if they would have put Bret Hart on this booking, on this Legends list.
I mean, but I guess at the same time, he'd never really done anything with the NWA.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. These are established NWA champions. You have a point. You're right.
Midnights were at a hotel, and Bret and Neidhart were there, and Bret was just sort of very cordial, and Neidhart was like, "You know who those are, right?" And Bret was like, "No." Neidhart's like, "They're like the best tag team in the world," and Bret's like, "But we are." He's like, "Well, we're the best in the WWF, but they're the best in the world." So,
Wow.
but yeah, Bret never really sort of paid any attention to wrestling outside like Stampede or what he was involved with at the time.
Kinda.
Yeah. So yeah, he had no idea who like the Midnight Express were, and this was be like 1989 or whatever, when they were basically at the probably their peak at the time. Ed starts making snarky remarks, but shuts up as soon as Steamboat starts to speak. So maybe he's not as stupid as I give him credit for.
Steamboat's actually the young stud in the ring, right? Compared to everybody else, Steamboat's like the young guy.
I think
At least he looks the best.
I think he is the youngest. Sort of, I'm trying to think. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, I remember
they
when I
were
had
all
the
pros
story,
before
like,
he
the
was.
first time he met Bret Hart. It
Going
was him
by
and
that
the
metric, I'm going with, yeah, he's the youngest here. Yeah, he does. So he does like this really nice sort of heartfelt speech about sort of how the title drove him and the importance to those who sort of competed to it through the years. He then announced that come the end of the battle royal, he'll be the referee between the two men standing at the end of the battle royal, which is kind of cool. This
Yeah,
brings
good
out
old Steamboat.
sort of Jeff Jarrett, which Ed Ferrara seems happy about. Jarrett then runs down the idea of winning the title in a battle royal. He says it's the biggest joke made of the NWA title, which is true if you haven't paid attention to some of the things that have happened to the belt in the last 10 years, given the coverage. That's entirely possible. Is it the biggest joke of the NWA title? I mean, you've had the AWA pulling out, the WWF pulling out, the WWF pulling out, ECW pulling out, WCW pulling out, and Chris Candido killing a cat while he was the NWA champion.
Wait, literally?
In kayfabe.
Okay.
It was on Smoky Mountain in like 1994, but it's you kind of sort of go through some of the things and it's like, yeah, this title's been through the ringer a bit. All of those better than it being put on Tyrus.
Yeah, I mean, that title, it really, like, late 90s, early 2000s, it really had some low points. It really did.
So Fargo interrupts and tells Jarrett that he's going to put him first in the battle royal to see if he can really beat the rest of the field. Jarrett says, Jarrett's fine with that. And this brings out Ken Shamrock, who says, yeah, the battle royal idea sucks, but Jarrett is going to beat him regardless. This brings out Scott Hall, who emerges through the crowd wearing a T-shirt from a local strip club. He also thinks the battle royal sucks, which might not be the best message to be sending out during the first segment of your show. Jarrett then threatens Fargo and storms out to end the segment. Yeah, that is. I think it's fair to say that that's not the best way to start your show by saying
what they were doing. What Jeff Jarrett was doing was what he was trying to say, and it was very poorly worded. Was that a battle royal is not a fair way to decide a champion? And I feel like if he would have said that, that would have came across a lot better than saying that it sucks, because you're right, exactly what you said. Real quick on this segment, I do like how people were kind of popping up out of nowhere. Like, they found different creative ways to have people like Scott Hall was in the crowd, Jeff Jarrett was on the stage. I think Ken Shamrock comes out and he was somewhere else. I think a different spot in the crowd or something like that. I really feel like that was pretty cool.
I mean, those are the big three sort of people that they promote. I mentioned last week they did like a TV spot to promote the pay-per-view with sort of Don West, and the only thing they really had to promote was those three names. So yeah, it was a good choice to sort of stick them out here.
Yeah, especially if they promoted those three names, because they've already established that those people are in the building.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to book your debut wrestling show, something to think about is the first faces people see are going to be the ones that sort of
like
stick
Jackie
with them for a bit.
Fargo and Harley Race.
Well, no, not even that. So the first face people saw on this broadcast was Don West, which is a voice that's the first wrestler they saw is Jeff Jarrett, which I think I'd say speaks volumes, but it sort of certainly enhances what a lot of people probably think about Jeff Jarrett, and we'll go into it in a minute. But the first wrestler you see going into a match is AJ Styles. So if this had been put in the right order with the triple threat match, the first wrestler anyone would have seen on a TNA pay-per-view would have been AJ Styles, which, given how they pushed him over the next sort of few shows, I think is a pretty good choice on their part, because he's all about, you don't get a second chance to make a good first impression. And so they at least have the concept right of how to create that good first impression right off the bat. Whether some of the choices I made throughout the show, kind of hit or miss, but on that side, I think it worked, or they were at least trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, it was cool to see AJ come out first too, especially like you said, how he basically became the face of the company for the next 9 years.
Yeah,
or whatever it was.
Yeah. So
No, he left in
backstage,
13, so 12 years or 11 years. Oh, yeah, that's a long time.
yeah, it must have hurt when they just turned around and said, "Yeah, we don't know if we've got anything else for you." Um,
They asked him to
and
take a pay cut, was what it was. They said, we know that you've been doing basically all the work. You're the best thing that we have. If we lost you, we'd be nothing. But you take a pay cut. And he goes, no, I'm going to New Japan. Like, he knew his worth at that point, you know? And then he went off and he went from being like a pretty good, decent guy to being like a world renowned superstar.
yeah, I mean, we'll sort of, yeah, it's a process we're sort of going to sort of kind of watch, over the next sort of few years of this. But yeah, it's really interesting to see sort of how he develops, especially those last sort of 3 or 4 years. People, I'll say this now, we'll go. But if we get there, we'll probably go into it more. But I think one of the best things that happened to him was the Ric Flair stuff because, okay, it wasn't him, but it helped him develop and bring
Yeah, right.
character into his sort of work that he didn't otherwise have.
So, as a comedian, when you first start doing comedy, some of the things you're going to do are going to be kind of wacky, kind of wild, kind of off the wall. You're going to do a lot of different things to see what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And he was able to do that in TNA for a lot of years. And then when he went to WWE, he is kind of a little bit of everything, and that's his voice.
Yeah,
A little piece of this, a little piece of that. Like, he was, the little emo character he had that everybody hated. He was a little bit of that when he got into WWE. He was a little bit of phenomenal, a little bit of emo, but like, it worked for him and he made it work. And it was like he found his voice.
yeah. So moving on backstage, Goldilocks does an interview with Puppet the Psycho Dwarf. According to him,
Oh my gosh,
midgets.
is this when he was in the garbage can?
No, no.
Okay, I got my segments mixed up.
No, according to him, the midgets are the true stars of TNA, and he wants to see some midgets bleed. This is then interrupted by a pissed off Jeff Jarrett throwing some furniture around in the background. So this guy Puppet, I just want to. So last week we mentioned the IPW Hardcore promotion, and he's a manager there and a color commentator of their roundup show. And
In this time frame, you mean?
I think he's still doing it at this time frame. It's interesting to watch.
Oh, you mean like currently now, or do you mean in 2002?
It's in 2002.
Okay.
Yeah, it's weird to watch because the TV product is just awful. But if you like car crash stuff, it's fairly interesting to watch just because they're like dropping like insider terms, and it's like, no, you don't get how this works, which is weird because as a manager, he seems to be sort of a fairly strong manager. It's just, but yeah, if you go onto the IPW Hardcore YouTube page, they're pretty much all on there, but it's organized so badly. But if you want to, if you want sort of car crash TV, it's out there.
And if you watch it out of order, it's even more car crash because nothing makes sense.
No, but you do get Devin Nash and Pat McGroin.
Excellent.
So we cut to the cage dancers as JB announces the first match.
Ooh.
So,
the TNA of TNA, literally, right?
Yeah, they get a lot of TV time, more than some of the wrestlers, I think, especially on this first show.
Not more than Jackie Fargo.
No, he does get a lot of TV time on this. Yeah,
he does.
So, first out is AJ Styles, followed by Loki and Jerry Lynn. Mike states that these are representing the X Division. Backstage, the legends are watching the monitor, praising the three athletes. Out next is Sonny Siaki, Jimmy Yang, and Jorge Estrada, dressed in Elvis suits and glasses, which Ferrara approves of, given the way he's dressing. I don't think he would be able to comment, even if he thought they did look bad, because again, he's dressed ridiculously.
Yeah, who the heck is going to comment on anybody's attire?
Yeah. The legends are shown looking like this is a bad joke. And yeah, I completely agree with them. Today states that the X Division is all about a fast-paced, high-flying style that isn't restricted to weight limits. Wow, he summed that up really well and succinctly, given that there have been certain former wrestling promoters who said, oh yeah, but what even is the X Division? Well,
oh my gosh. So Eric Bischoff is very anti-X Division, and he's like, "What does it even mean? What does it even mean?" And like, I love Eric Bischoff, but I cringe so hard when he talks about the X Division. It's just because he's older. He just doesn't get it. And
Yeah.
like, as soon as like you said, Mike Tenay summed up in like 2 sentences. You know, it's very simple concept, and it's amazing. It's not a size division. It's a style division, if you will.
Yeah. So all 6 are in the ring, and the Elvises turn down a handshake and then jump the faces. Once their backs are turned, the faces switch up with Lynn and Loki taking out 2 of the guys with drop kicks, and AJ hitting a Rana on Yang. Ki and Lynn then hit 2 dives to the Elvises on the outside. Power Slam gets AJ 2 or 2 1s. That was a really sloppy looking cover, which is a shame because it was a crisp sequence up until that cover. Flapjack and a leg lariat gets 2 for Yang. Forearm out of back suplex gets AJ to tag to Lynn. Tilt the wall backbreaker gets 2, as it was mentioned that Lynn, Key, and Styles will be 3 of the 4 going for the new X title next week. It is not called the X Division title at this point. It won't be for some time. Yang springs up with a tornado DC and hits a drop kick, takes Lynn to the corner and tags in Siaki. I recently saw a reviewer state that at this point Siaki was a Rock wannabe, and everything he does in the ring makes it impossible for me not to see him that way.
I thought he was going to be a superstar, honestly.
I can see that. He does have an air about him that just sort of makes you think, oh yeah, this guy thinks he's the greatest thing ever.
And he has a good look, and he has a good size, you know,
Yeah.
and he was young, and he had a lot of time to develop. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so Siaki misses a somersault leg drop, which leads to Lynn getting a 2, following a head scissors into a wheelbarrow bulldog. Low-key is now in, but gets cut off and goes down for 2, following a nice-looking neck breaker. Siaki straps it down, which doesn't mean he's prepared for business, but he almost gets cut off by Low-key kicking the corner, but gets 2 out of a nice-looking sort of shoulder-mounted backbreaker thing. Jorge Estrada in with springboard moonsault from the outside in for 2, a reverse neck breaker off the top rope. Looks really kind of meh because he was more focused on protecting Loki than actually making the move look good, which on the one hand is good that he's looking after his opponent, but on the other, if you're going to hit a move you're not sure about on live TV, don't. Running shooting star gets a 2 on Loki, drop kick to the knees of Estrada, and Loki hits his nice sort of 3 kicks with a ground slap. He collapses into a tag into Styles as Yang comes in. Yang and Styles duck each other's kicks, and Styles hits a nice forearm, springboard moonsault into a reverse DDT that would look so much better if Styles didn't pause once he sort of landed. I think he could do that so smoothly, but he just never does. Yang hits a leg lariat after flipping out of a waist lock. Loki breaks up a cover and sends Yang to the outside. Estrada hits a short powerbomb on Loki for 2, despite neither being legal. But I don't know if anyone's counting at this point. Loki hits his pile driver on Estrada, but turns around into a cyclone neck breaker from Sonny Siaki. Styles back in and sends Siaki out, and Yang is back in. Loki accidentally cartwheel kicks Styles in the corner, and Estrada sends him out the ring, nearly taking out the ref. Yang hits a twisting moonsault, the Yang time for the 3 count. Okay, so thoughts on this match?
Why did the Elvises win?
I can answer that one. I don't
know if this is a controversial opinion, but I think that week 2 of TNA, NWA TNA, it should have been the Elvises in a triple threat match for the X Division title. Obviously, they're better.
I mean, I can see your argument for that. I will put this argument forward. So, it's established that Loki, Styles, and Lynn are set up for the 4-man, the X Division title. So you know one of them is going to win. They know, obviously, Styles is going to win because it's happening in 3 hours' time from this.
Yeah.
That's the way it's booked. So therefore, you've got your guy who's going to become champion getting pinned by another guy, which immediately sets him up with a credible challenger, in theory.
Yeah, but I think that those 3 guys should look strong going into week 2. All 3 had the momentum of the win, and then have whoever is going to lose week 2 get the pinfall on week 1 and have that person look like for example, if AJ is going to beat Low-Key to become the X Division champion, have Low-Key get the win on week 1 and make Low-Key look strong. And then when AJ pins Low-Key, then they can have their little feud from there.
I mean, that is an argument, yeah. I mean, my issue is the fact that out of the 3 Elvises, they chose Yang. Nothing against Yang; he's a great talent, but that's pretty much all he is. He's just sort of there. I mean, I think.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, nobody gives a shit about these 3 guys. Like, they're just Elvises. Nobody cares.
See, I'm not. I'll go into it in a sec, but I'm not against the gimmick. But no, Jimmy Yang, I think it says a lot. Did you hear about how he once got rehired by the WWE?
Yes, because he was visiting backstage and Vince started pitching him an idea, and Vince did not know that he did not work there anymore. Something like that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So he is such a strong character that Vince McMahon didn't realize he hadn't worked there in like 10 months or whatever. So
yeah, that's crazy.
So yeah, that's not exactly a great selling point for someone who they're pushing as a top contender here. I think maybe you're right. Maybe Siaki should have been like the guy. I still
think that I still think like Low-Key should have got the pinfall in that match.
Yeah, but if you were going to
Jerry Lynn.
But if you're going to give it to one of the Elvises, Siaki probably would have been the better one because he's just the one who comes across more of a star.
Wait, who was the third one?
Jorge Estrada.
Oh, that's right. From the Break was right?
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay, anyway.
So, I mean, what's your thought on the Elvis gimmick anyway?
I don't know. I don't like it. It's silly. It's uncalled for. It makes him look kind of silly and gimmicky. It just is like we're out the gate, okay? And so far we've had old people, and now you're giving us like goofy stuff. Like, I don't know. I don't like it. I feel like I would have liked it more if it was Sonny Siaki, Jimmy Yang, and Jorge Estrada in their normal gimmicks.
I'm going to try and convince you that the Elvis isn't such a bad gimmick, so bear with me. LA Knight is one of the top stars in the WWE right now, yeah?
Yeah.
Do you think part of the support he gained is just through the way he became LA Knight on TV?
I don't, because he's been over for a long time on smaller stages. Like, he was a big name in TNA, even though nobody really knew who he was mainstream.
Yeah. But do you think like the WWE audience, they reacted better to him because of the way he broke out of that models gimmick? Do you think if he had just been introduced as LA Knight, he would have that support behind him, whereas people saw him in the models gimmick, saw him break out of the models gimmick, destroy the models, and be like,
no, I don't think that made him a bigger star. I feel like that stunted his growth because he already had the following on NXT already. And if he would have just came in and just did what he does and just acts like LA Knight, then I feel like the fanfare would have followed.
Okay, all right.
But I feel like the whole models thing was so dumb. And then they brought up Maxine Dupree, and now it was that was so dumb. And then I'm gonna go ahead and shout out to Mansoor because he's on the indie scene and he is amazing, and I did not appreciate him.
Well, but so you're saying because he already had the establishment. However, here we have 3 guys. Yang people know from WCW. The other 2 aren't established. Would you say where Sonny Siaki, they're looking like they're sort of going to push Sonny Siaki in the future? Do you think that argument would work for Sonny Siaki, where breaking out of a crappy gimmick would give him the extra momentum, would give people a reason to get behind him? Can you see where I'm coming from there?
Potentially, yes. But this was a one and done, wasn't it? Or did they do this for a long time?
Not for a long time. It's only a few weeks.
I feel like this was like a one and done, and it didn't really lead. Did he actually like break out? Did he say, "This is stupid. I'm not Elvis. I'm Sonny Siaki"? Did that happen eventually?
I believe there is something that happens. We'll cover it when it comes.
I'm not a fan of it, but we'll see how I feel about it in 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay, all right then. So another shot at the cage dances before the next match, and it's a midget match. JB's words, not mine. Although, yeah, I don't know. Hollywood gets the jobber entrance, and Teo gets announced as the world's smallest extreme athlete. Hollywood looks like he's just come out of a mosh pit. He jumps Teo while he's posing on the ropes, and that doesn't last long as Teo goes for a flying head scissors, but Hollywood just falls over to a notable ooh from the crowd. Teo works Hollywood over in the corner, but Mike talks about his appearance for WWE against Puppet, who we saw with Goldilocks earlier. Diving headbutt low with Hollywood still in the corner, but the ref allows it. A 10 punch in a different corner, and Hollywood is holding the ropes instead of putting up some sort of fight. I guess that explains why he got the jobber entrance. Hollywood reverses a corner charge into a slam for 2, while Tenay goes on about how Mysterio, who influenced Teo, was nearly booked as a midget in his early days. Well, that was kiboshed. Not to knock the division, but there's a good reason that freaking happened. Surprise roll-up gets 2, Teo and Hollywood returns with a clothesline that catches Teo in the gut. Teo is selling like her, and I honestly believe him. Teo kicks out of a top rope splash. Teo goes to reverse an Irish whip, but Hollywood loses his grip, so Teo just starts wailing on him. Side Russian leg sweep, and Hollywood is down for Teo to hit a twisting senton off the ropes for the win. Apparently, Teo stands for Total E Outstanding. With this company, I'm not going to complain about bad acronyms. Any thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, they were, the quote unquote midget wrestling. It's a thing. I don't mean disrespect by it, but like it's a thing, right? They use that.
Yeah.
Back in the day, like the special attractions were women and midgets, right? They put on the flyers. It's different. I feel like they were using this to kind of establish being different from the WWE. But there was no longevity. They didn't really stick with it long term, so it didn't really accomplish anything. But it was cool. It was all right.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't notice it the first time I watched it. When I had to sit down and take notes, I was like, this guy Hollywood is screwing up a lot.
Yeah, right. They probably got the best they could find. They were just trying to get a midget division. What do they call it? Is there a division? A minis division? I don't know. They probably would have been better off to get some minis out of Mexico, but that would have been more expensive.
Oh, I just suddenly thought of a bit I was going to bring up during the Legends segment. You just made me think of it with what you just said.
What was that?
So I'm just sort of thinking, like, out of the Legends they had, I'm just thinking it's a shame that Luthez would have passed probably about a month or so before the show, because I'd be interested to see I would be interested to see whether he would have taken this booking, because he famously said he would never defend the title on a show with women or midgets competing.
Oh, he did. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I'd be interested in seeing whether he would have taken this booking just as a legend with both on the show. Although consider saying that, the last time he appeared on TV was probably the Bad Blood pay-per-view, which did have a midget match booked on it last minute. Okay, so next segment is an extended dance sequence from the girls. In the ring, Don and
That's number
Ed.
2. That's number 2.
That's number 3 so far.
Oh man, I lost one.
So Ed's taking his jacket off, and the fuzzy shirt he's wearing looks worse than the leather jacket and the leather trousers. Next week, there is a lingerie battle royal to crown Miss TNA. They introduce the contestants. Queen of Extreme, Francine. Miss Joni, I don't know, and the camera missed her entrance. Shannon, the former Daphne. Alexis Lurie, whose entrance was missed because the camera was focused on the next stone-faced woman to come out. Sasha, who apparently is from NCW. I don't know either. Erin, who is a former Baltimore Ravens cheerleader. Apparently, some female indie workers are thin on the ground for this. But I think we said that earlier this podcast, actually. Then you have Elektra, and then you have Taylor Vaughan, formerly BB from WWF and Pioneer WCW. And lastly, Taylor, who makes her debut here, and I don't know if she ever appears again after next week.
Yeah, unfortunately, the women's wrestling pool was very slim pickings at this point in time.
Yeah.
I
During
mean,
the
this was probably the best they could do.
I said earlier how I read a lot of reviews just sort of for putting like this together and the video I did the other day. I was just using like reviews just for the notes really, and nearly all of them said a pre-implant Mickey James when Alexis Lurie came out. And it's just like, did you really need to state that? That just seems like a weird thing to pick up on.
Yeah, it does. Like, oh, never mind. But yeah, I agree. It's wild though that she turned out to be such a good wrestler,
It is, yeah.
and she was in there with all these like women that couldn't wrestle.
Yeah, I think on the Indie Wrestling 20 years ago show we did an intergender match. Like one of it would be she'd only been about a year or two into her career, and it's just weird just sort of watching her because I came up with a list of stuff that she did wrong, and it's just stuff you sort of look at and go, well, if there's a vet backstage, it's exactly the stuff that they would have told her, I'm guessing someone did because it's stuff that she would. There's no way she would have done like 5 years later. But I've offhand, I can't remember what those notes were, but Indie Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast. Check it out. There's only 5 episodes. So yeah, during the entrances, someone had to hand Ed his jacket back because it's required for a spot in this contest. There is just gaffes aplenty going through this. Moving on. So Francine starts to run down the other women before Elektra interrupts. She said something about who made Francine the Queen of Extreme, and this was a new company without Extreme in the title, and that somehow Francine was responsible for bankrupting ECW. It's odd. This leads to a cat fight between the two, and Francine rips off Electra's shirt, and Don West covers her up with Ferrara's jacket that someone fortunately handed into the ring during the entrances. And then Francine goes off stating that she will be the winner next week. And is there really anything to say about this?
It was what it was. What's his face was a perv. Ed Ferrara. Yeah, it was okay.
I don't know if this was even needed here, really. Apparently, I think it was on Jarrett's podcast. He said that Shane Douglas turned down being on the show because Francine was going to be on the show, and there was a few other people who sort of shared similar feelings. So if she disappears off these shows quite quickly, that might be a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next up,
I mean, she was honestly like, there's no reason to have Francine.
Yeah.
No disrespect to her, but like, she was named after Shane Douglas, wasn't she? The franchise.
Possibly.
I don't know.
I'm not a big ECW guy. I know that she came back in for the ECW reunion in 2006, and she did not last long in the WWE. She was only there 2 or 3 months before they just cut her, and she only appeared on TV like 2 or 3 times.
I don't remember her being there.
I think, like I said, it was only 2 or 3 times she appeared on TV. She did. Apparently, there was just some issues with her trying to invoice for like the tanning sessions she did to appear on TV, and that didn't go down well. And she was just offering nothing of note. Mortimer Plumtree is doing an interview with Goldilocks. He states that his former school bullies and now his tag team, they do what he wants and dresses how he dresses. They are the Johnsons. I've got here, this guy is a great talker, but he looks like almost a Wish.com cornet.
Mortimer Plumtree, is that who it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was all right. It was the first time I really saw him on this, looking back on it. I don't remember him. I don't think he lasted very long.
No, it's just a shame because I think he's got potential, but I don't know, the gimmick just...
The name is very off-putting.
Yeah, I suppose. With me, it's more just the way he looks. It looks just kind of... So we've got a fantastic manager in this country called Dean Ayers, and he's got this theory that as a wrestling manager, you shouldn't be dressed in anything that you'd be just happy just to wander down the street in, which is, I think, is fair. And I think there is a degree of that with Country, but I don't know. I feel there's something more he could be doing or something different.
He just didn't have it. I didn't like him. What did he ever do in wrestling? Did he ever do anything?
I'm not sure, actually.
Is this being on a couple episodes of TNA? Is that like his claim to fame?
Technically, he managed AJ Styles, so he managed the X Division champion.
Well, there you go.
So yeah, the Johnsons are out first, and they are wearing what looks like full body condoms. Their names are Rod and Richard because subtlety in wrestling is unnecessary. So we've got James Storm out with Psychosis. Ferrara says something about cowboy gimmicks being outlawed in 1992. It would be nice if someone could knock him back there. James fires off some blanks out of, he's got some pistols, which does look really cool. Kind of flashback to, I know the Smoking Guns did it like King of the Ring 1993, except there's the pyro. These seem to be actual pistols. So starts off with Psychosis getting worked over in the corner and a butterfly suplex and a snap suplex. Both get 2 on him. Psychosis hits the heel kick and tags in Storm, who catches the illegal man with a top rope drop kick. Illegal Johnson powders to avoid having the double team. And Aisha, the former Ryan Shamrock, appears at ringside, which results in Ed Ferrara trying to outsleaze Jerry Lawler. I'm ragging on the guy a lot, but if you had to listen to him, so would you. Ring.
I like I said before, I established I like this guy as a human being, but like he was too much Jerry Lawler in the perv department. He was too much Bobby Heenan when he was fawning over Jeff Jarrett. He was just too much, and he was taking from the best, and he wasn't living up to it.
Yeah. Back in the ring, James Storm gets worked over. Something happens while the camera plans by Aisha, and we see Storm skinning the cat. He hits a wheelbarrow bulldog despite a lack of cooperation from its opponent and goes for the leg. Psychosis tries to follow up, but gets caught by the illegal man, and when he hits the ropes, double flapjack and a release suplex on the high flyer, and the other Johnson is in double clothesline, and the legal guy signals it's over, goes for a powerbomb, but Psychosis channels his inner Kidman. Double tag, and Storm is a house of fire, and a nice runner from Storm. The faces go to whip the twins into each other, but they reverse, catch the faces with another release suplex. Storm reverses something into a schoolboy for 2, but gets thrown off when he sort of attempts a tornado DDT. Distraction from Plum Tree sees Storm fall to a variation of like the old TKO move for the Johnson victory. As the ref leaves, Alicia demands money off of him in a story I don't think actually went anywhere.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's weird. It was weird.
So, thoughts on the Dicks? The Johnsons.
I don't know. No comment. It was weird. Storm and Psychosis is a weird combination. I feel like it was a weird place to put Psychosis. As you're reading this, I'm thinking to myself, this is a waste of Psychosis. They should put him in an X Division spotlight match.
I mean, I don't think they say it here, but he is the 4th guy in the X Division match next week.
That's good.
This was try and get the Johnsons over as a team.
They just took 2 guys that they had nothing else for and just said, "You guys lose to the Johnsons." That's basically what it was.
Yeah, one of the reviews I read for this said about how it would have been better if they'd have built to the full body condom thing with because Mortimer in his interview said, "Oh yeah, they do what I want and dress how I want and sort of slowly build them up to it." Which I don't know if I agree with that, but it's certainly something.
What would be funny too is if they asked him like, "Hey, aren't you worried about your guys? Like, aren't you worried tonight?" And he goes, "Oh no, don't worry about it. We got protection."
Yeah. So it's just, I think it's just a rotten gimmick.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Interestingly, on one of the podcasts where they discuss this, Jarrett actually does try and defend it. His argument is quite simply, you miss every one of the shots you don't take. Now, I have a counter for that, and that is this theory I've worked on. There is a chance one of us is immortal. There is a slight chance, like minute. But you know what? I'm not prepared for either of us to test it, because if I'm wrong, which I very much might be, then it's going to screw up. And the same with dressing 2 wrestlers as fucking penises. I don't see that being like a popular thing. It's not really something, you can
The
sort of do
thing about
merchandise.
it is they were going too hard with the TNA name. They were
Yeah.
going like, we're gonna get young horny guys, and it's gonna be all about sex, and it's gonna be dicks, and there's gonna be naked women, not naked women, whatever, dancing women, and the dicks, and then we'll get to the Rainbow Express at some point. Like they were just trying to make it sexually charged for young men, and which is it's just weird. It's just weird. Like they couldn't get away with this today.
Yeah, this is I don't know
I was
what the
watching
words
the
are
show
for.
with my wife recently, and it's almost embarrassing, like how sexually charged it is.
Yeah, the in
It's like,
demands.
is this
Yeah,
wrestling or is this a pornography?
yeah, that's actually one of the concerns at the first in demand meeting was because they saw the initials and were like, oh, it's not going to be all like that, is it? And they're like, oh no, it's going to be just sort of, what wrestling's been for the last few years. We're just going to take it to the edge. We're not going to do anything obscene. And then, yeah, they do this. It's Jarrett said, miss every one of the swings you don't take, but this is a swing that is not going to connect with anyone that's going
Yeah.
to.
And then the stuff with Francine in the lecture earlier felt so lowbrow.
Yeah, I mean, it was bad then, and it's not aged
It's
any
just,
better.
so far, everything we've seen, Flying Elvis is included. The only thing I'm really going to say was good was AJ Styles, but so far, everything we've seen was pretty lowbrow. The midget wrestling, that was pretty crazy. Like the puppet interview, that was wild.
Yeah, so moving on and moving away from lowbrow. So Goldilocks is backstage where she meets the Dups. Mo and Stan introduce their cousin / girlfriend Fluff.
Oh yeah, this is bad too.
So they crack.
I looked up the girl recently when I was watching this. I looked her up. She didn't do much else. Her name was Seven Briggs. Outside of TNA, I was hoping she had some sort of a career, but she really didn't.
So they crack open some beers, and Bill Barons walks past and says, "There's no beer drinking in the locker room to stop intoxication in the ring." We'll get to that Jeff Hardy match later, but just the quote: "Whoever heard of getting drunk on beer? If it's US brewed, it certainly takes some doing because that stuff is basically diluted yak piss."
I couldn't agree with you more on that. Like when it's like when you drink beers, it's like, and people are getting belligerent, and I'm like, dude, you've had Bud Lights. Like, what are you doing?
Negative backlash of people turning on Bud Light recently. It's like,
oh yeah, that's hilarious too.
I find it hilarious that that's the reason they did it. Whereas the reason I would not drink Bud Light is because it tastes like the urine of someone who's been drinking a much better beer.
Yep.
So Hermie Sadler and Sterling Marlin are introduced, and JB looks bored. I get it. Driving in the circle is not the most enthralling sport. So he interviews the guys, and they are interrupted by Kay Crush, who states that drivers have no place in a wrestling ring. I can see his argument. Crush starts saying that all the things that his kind can do compared to their kind, I don't think it's supposed to be racial, but it could very easily be taken for that at this point. Hermie responds to the appreciation of the crowd, and Crush looks like he's about to get physical as he grabs Hermie. Brian Lawler races in and fights him off. The NASCAR guys then dump him over the floor, and he lands. And that looks like a really hard landing. Lawler grabs the mic and nearly drops a D-bomb. Lawler challenges K-Crush for next week, and Crush accepts as security drags him away. Are they making this too Southern? Is NASCAR?
Yes, I was thinking that exactly they were, but that's what they know. That's what they do. They're in Alabama. Their roots are in Tennessee. They're Southern. That's what they do. That's what they know. I don't care about NASCAR. It's never been appealing to me. I don't care about Hermie Sadler. But this was actually a really cool segment. Except for the Brian Christopher stuff. Anything Brian Christopher did in TNA was not very good.
Yeah, we'll get to him in the Battle Royal shortly.
Did you say Brian Lawler in this segment, or am I just imagining that?
I did say Brian Lawler.
Okay.
Apparently, there was a plan for him to go from one to the other. So Tenay and Ferrara actually call them different things because of that, because there is that confusion, and both get frustrated with the other one because it's like, no, it's this one, and it's like, No, it's actually not, is it?
I just call him Brian Christopher. That's just what I would know him as to me.
He's definitely Brian Lawler by the end of his run. I think he was supposed to start off as Christopher, but it's not actually. But it's mostly Ferrara who references it. Ferrara keeps calling him Lawler. So we agree that it's quite southern with the NASCAR thing, but I mean,
Yeah.
WWF in 1985, that first WrestleMania was quite New York, but that still did quite well. Is it? Do you think that's inspiring?
The thing for me though, like I'm from California. I'm from a big city, and I feel like the New York, the cosmopolitan, kind of resonated with me more. You know, I kind of felt it more because that was more of what I was. You know, I wasn't Southern. I wasn't, horses and NASCAR and things like that. I was more like glitz and glamour and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it would have no resonance over here because we have Formula One over here, which is an actual race sport. If racing is a sport, it's not just driving in a circle. For some reason, as we go backstage, Jeff Jarrett is strangling Fargo as officials peel him off. No explanation given. It just is a thing. Next out, Christian York and Joey Matthews come down for the ring, and they look really good shape, actually. The camera cut shows a nearly empty section of the crowd in the corner by the ring on the hard cam side. And out comes the Dupps, looking like the trailer park equivalent of the Godwins. The Dupps sneak attack Matthews and York while they're distracted by Fluff. They hit a double flapjack on Matthews, but as they go for something else, they catch a springboard dropkick from York. The teams get on the wrong corners of the apron, and I can't be the only one who noticed that. Double suplex on Stan gets 2. Stan hits a surprise full Nelson slam as he tags Bo. Bo beats up on Matthews and gets 2 off a splash. Stan in, and Matthews does some nice reversals, finally hitting a neck break before tagging out York in, and every time it seems the Dupps have the numbers on him, he fights out of it. Fireman's carry following it by a senton gets York 2. Bo back in, and Matthews takes out Stan with a cross body that takes them both to the outside. Tornado DDT from York. It looks like he's going for a moonsault, however. Fluff grabs the ankle, and this is enough for Bo to knock him off the ropes to steal the win. Do you have any thoughts on the hillbilly thing that they're doing here?
No, none whatsoever. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, this is the one gimmick. Out of the 3 gimmicks we've had so far, I can get behind the Elvis thing on it for the short run. The Johnsons thing just doesn't work for me. This one, it just seems so. I think this. So it's 2002, and I just think, well, this seems kind of mid 90s at best.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like Fluffed Up though.
And what are your thoughts on the names? Because I think the pun that sort of appeals to me most is stand up, but that might just be.
I think that is overly silly, and like that's just when you're trying to establish yourself, you got to stay away from the overly silly things for the sake of being silly. Like if his name was like, Stan, I don't know, Stan. I can't think of anything cool, but like I feel like if he had a regular, real hillbilly name, it would have been more. You would have been able to take a little more seriously. But like with a name like Stand Up and Fluffed Up, and then I forget the other guy's name. It's like
Bowed Up.
You go, come on, what was it?
So bowed up, as in
bowed up. Yeah. I would. But it's like you go, come on, you can't take that seriously. It's like Hugh Morris, Well,
you say that Hugh Morris wasn't the worst name.
Did you know it took me years to realize that was like a thing, like a word, humorous?
To be fair, I didn't realize it till I heard the promo where he changed it to Hugh Rection.
I think you're right. I think that's when I realized. I was like, that's what they were trying to do this whole time. I just thought Hugh Morris. Like I never thought it was humorous.
Well, it's like
Laughing Man, Hugh Morris.
It's weird. It took me years to get Waylon Mercy, but
I still don't get that.
Well, because people will get in the ring with him, and he'll twist them and turn them till they're wailing Mercy.
Oh wow! I thought Waylon was after Waylon Jennings, the country singer.
Maybe.
Well, I could be wrong. That's what I always assumed anyway.
Yeah. So this is the only match from Christian York for I think 10 years in TNA. which is a surprise because he actually looks like really, really great shape here.
This is only match, really?
He comes back, like I said, 10 years later. It's like
Yeah, I remember when he came back and he had the dreads and stuff.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize that. I thought he was established. I thought York and Matthews were established tag team.
They were on the indies at this point, yeah.
Because I knew them and I wanted them to be as stars. And it just, yeah, wow. Did Matthews come back?
I'm not sure actually.
That's interesting.
Because couple of years later, he would of course go to OVW and start working out there
and start being on the Eminem, yeah.
Because Eminem was actually
tag team.
Yeah, because that was actually his idea.
That's cool.
Because when they sort of called them up, they were looking for someone else to go in his place because he wasn't actually on a WWE contract. He was just an OVW guy. And they turned around and said, well, no, it's all Matthews doing. So he kind of has to be part of it.
Interesting.
Oh, we didn't mention who stand-up was.
He was in developmental.
He's future NWA heavyweight champion Trevor Murdoch.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The other guy was in development. One of them was in WWE developmental before this.
Yeah, I think they both had run like some latter day ECW shows as well.
Murdoch. Wow.
Yeah, he looked a bit different here.
A lot different.
He sort of put on, quite a bit of weight between here and his WWE days. And he lost the bleached hair. There is a lot of bleached hair in these early shows, and you just sort of think it's amazing how that just that's a thing that's just so sort of early aughts that you just don't see anymore. Which is weird because I sort of around see like all these wondrous colors people have dyed their hair, but no one's ever gone back to, you know what I want to resemble? A light bulb. So next out it is Tony Keith, and he starts singing, and eventually
R.I.P.
Yeah, I actually had a guy sort of message me the other day sort of saying, oh, if you need any research or anything done, I was like, okay, well, we're starting the first episode this week. And it was just like, oh, you realize Tony Keith died yesterday. I was like, oh, actually, no, I didn't, because he's a country singer, and country music is not really something that we have a lot of over here. Because we have our own folk scene. We focus more on that than country music, but it just has like zero, unless it's like one of the big sort of pop acts like a Carrie Underwood or something. It doesn't penetrate at all over here. You ask a lot of people what they think of when they think country music, and most will just say Shania Twain. So yeah, Toby Keith starts singing, and eventually his guitar kicks in too, because again, more audio gaps. No disrespect to this, but I'm British and we don't have the kind of blind patriotism he's sort of showing here. So this is a bit odd for me. The British equivalent of this song would only exist if it included a healthy dose of cynicism. And this whole thing's cut short by sort of Jerry sort of barging past.
They actually did an episode of South Park because my wife and I are binging South Park, and like I think it's season 6 or season 7. They do an episode where Toby Keith is trying to make money off of 9/11 still, and so that's kind of what it seems like he's kind of doing this super uber patriotism is just kind of like, because 9/11 was just like a year ago and a little less than a year ago at this point. So if that's what he was known for, which I didn't really realize until I saw South Park, then it kind of makes sense with his uber patriotism.
The music scene post 9/11, it's interesting. Usually, when there's like political unrest like there was after like 9/11, it's usually falls on like the anti-war side. You've got like Vietnam is a great example because you've got like CCR and groups like that who really came through during that time. Whereas post 9/11, the only sort of like anti-authority sort of music that really resonated was the American Idiot album, and the other stuff that really sort of came through is stuff like this and Toby Keith. You lived through this time period in the States. How much did like patriotism really sort of peak around this? Was there like a notable sort of step up?
Yeah, it was wild. It was really wild how people were like, America, let's get them. I can go way more into it, but
yeah,
I won't. But yeah, it was pretty crazy.
So like I said, barges past him, grabs the mic, and tells Keith to hit the bricks. They've got the smallest security. They've got to stand next to Keith because he looks absolutely massive as they're sort of dragging on. He actually, so him and like the NASCAR guys, they're originally booked to be on the original day, which would have been the start of the month as opposed to the 18th. No, sorry, the 19th, which is when it's happening. And Keith actually turned down meeting the president for this, which is quite impressive. Yeah, he was supposed to do something at the White House.
Who was the president? George Bush?
This would have been Bush at this point, yeah.
Oh,
so
good
he was,
call.
yeah, so he was supposed to do the White House had asked him to do a performance on this day, and he was just like, "No, I'm going to Huntsville."
And he goes, "Oh," and then they go, "Well, what should we tell the president?" And then he goes, "Tell the president, how do you like me now?" That was the song he sang on TNA.
But yeah, so the Battle Royal is on. Number 2 in the Battle Royal is Buff Bagwell. Bagwell starts showing his fire, knocking Jarrett around. We even get Buff Blockbuster that Jarrett just gets straight back up from and backdrops Buff out of the ring.
No sold up Blockbuster.
Next out is Lash LaRue, who looks a bit heavier than he did in WCW. Jarrett wails on him, and they go through the ropes to the outside. After scrapping on the outside, Jarrett hits a stroke when they get back in the ring and sends him out. Number 4 is Screaming Norman Smiley. He must be taking it seriously as he's just in tights and boots, not the get-up he was wearing towards the end of his WCW tenure. Jarrett takes advantage as
it wasn't a hardcore match.
That's true, yeah. So Jarrett takes advantage. He gets in the ring. Smiley gains control before dancing. Amazingly, Norman is in the match long enough to get another comeback going before Jarrett cuts him off.
The big wiggle.
Yeah. So he gets eliminated after stroke. Next is Apollo.
Wait, did we say the big wiggle and the stroke in the same sentence?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
These first few entrants, there's not really a lot to say about. So next out is Apollo, who's the big Puerto Rican star that was featured in a lot of the print advertising for the show for some reason. Let's see how long he lasts.
Never did anything.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah, me too.
He nearly ended Scott Steiner's life in a match in Puerto Rico, but that wasn't on TNA.
Interesting. I don't know about that, but we'll get into that maybe at some point.
Yeah, don't you remember Steiner? When they did the Steiner Brothers reunion, Steiner had to miss a couple of months because he actually had his larynx crash. They had to cut under his arm and go up through his arm to sort of weave.
Holy crap! No, I do not.
Yeah, it's a really gnarly looking scar that he's got there now. But
is that why he got all the tattoos?
This was after he got the tattoos. But yeah, this is.
Okay.
But he does get brought up when they feuding with the Dudley Boys. So that
Apollo never really did anything in wrestling other than he was in TNA for a couple of months to a year.
Yeah. But yeah, no, he's quite big over in Puerto Rico. Thought they were sort of going with bringing him here. So yeah, Jarrett jumps him as he slides in, but absorbs all the punishment and reverses Jarrett's flailing into a short powerbomb. He seemingly has an answer for everything Jarrett throws at him and tries to dump the former world champ, but he can't get him out after a couple of tries, so he just gets Jarrett in the gorilla press position, only to be followed by the entrance of K-Crush. Crush starts going toe-to-toe with Apollo, catching him with a scissor kick. As Apollo looks to be coming back, Jarrett starts beating him up. Next in is Slash, who was formerly Crowbar in WCW. Apollo fights back against K-Crush and Jarrett and goes toe-to-toe with Slash as he gets in the ring. Slash gets good at taking a back body drop and hits a nice looking DDT. Jarrett cuts off another gorilla press attempt and starts trying to work over Apollo. Number 8 is Del Rios, who was formerly Phantasmo in 1995 WWF. And here he is doing Scott Steiner cosplay.
This was very weird for me because I did not know who he was. What was his name again? Rios?
So, Del Rios.
Del Rios. So I didn't know what they were saying, and I was trying to Google this person and find out. It was weird. This should not have been part of the show. That was just too weird.
Was an odd choice. But like I said, he was Phantasmo in 1995 WWF for couple of months.
I mean, if they would have brought him in as anything other than wannabe Scott Steiner, that's fine. But it was just too weird that he looked like Scott. He looked just like at first I was like, I don't remember Scott Steiner being in TNA. Like I thought it was Scott Steiner at first.
Yeah, if I hadn't known that Scott wasn't going to be on the show, I would have thought that was
I was
Steiner.
tripping out because I saw this. I watched this first episode a few months ago, like before we even really planned on doing this, and it was pretty fresh in my mind. But I was tripping out when I saw that guy.
So following a beatdown, Rios tries for a belly to belly, but Slash just bites him. But he does do it to him in the end, though. Next out is Justice. The future Abyss looks really ready for this. Big boots to Apollo and Jarrett. We can get a preview of the Black Hole Slam on Rios. Jarrett
his name was
Apollo
Prince Justice on the Indies prior to TNA.
Yeah. So the Abyss thing that happens over in Puerto Rico, which is where he goes after this.
Interesting. I didn't know that either.
Yeah. So number 10, we have Conan, who starts dishing out rolling clothesline with his kneeling X Factor to whoever comes near him. So, what are we thinking of the Battle Royal so far?
I don't know. It's okay. It's pretty good. I just think that Rios guy is just does not belong.
It is kind of random. I don't know if you remember this from the Jarrett podcast, but part of the reason he went through like some of the guys at the start like really quickly was a discussion. It was something Russo said, and it was like, oh yeah, I don't think anyone will buy Jeff as an ass kicker. And they're like, why? I was like, oh, it's because of how he's been booked in the past and because he's Southern. And it's like, no, Southern guys can be pretty tough guys. I look at Oklahoma.
They can.
I look at, I sort of picture like a Oklahoma farm boy, you see someone like that kicking off in a bar, and I'm just like, I'm just going to go over there. I'll leave them to it. The thing with Russo saying part of the reason with Jeff is that he's not been booked strongly is a case of, well, hang on a minute. For the last 3 years, you were mostly in charge of his booking. So you're criticizing your own work by saying that. Yeah, self-awareness is not exactly high on that guy.
I was going to say, are you accusing Vince Russo of contradicting himself? Because that's happened.
Yeah. So number 11 is Bruce, and he's introduced by Joel Gertner, who looks really thin here. He cuts a promo to bring the Rainbow Express to the ring. Bruce, I don't know, he reminds me of someone from like the old World of Sport tapes, like maybe a toned down Adrian Street. But I don't know. I can't think who it is, but he looks like he would have fit in there. He gets wiped out quickly by Apollo as he sort of slides in. Next out, it's Rick Steiner, who clotheslines anything that moves. He backstrops Slash straight out and then throws out Justice. And Jarrett tries to cut him off, but gets backdropped for his troubles. Then out comes Malice, formerly the Wall in WCW. Choke slams for pretty much anything that moves. K-Crush, Del Rio, Conan, and Bruce, all of whom are pretty much dumped out straight away. Steiner tries to cut him off, but Malice low bridges him on a clothesline attempt and eliminates him. Jarrett and Malice attempt to dump Apollo, but he skins the cat as they turn and wait for number 14, who is Scott Hall. Scott Hall smacks both Jarrett and Malice around while Apollo goes up top to only get back down again and hit Malice. That made no sense, but whatever. He clocks him with a nice super kick, though. Hall hits the edge on Jarrett, but then waits for the clock to tick down for number 15 of Toby Keith. Nah, can't be right. But Keith comes in anyway and suplexes Jarrett, and him and Hall dump Jarrett out of the ring. Hall and Apollo light up Malice with shots while waiting for the next entrance, who is the real number 15 in Chris Harris. Tenay says Harris is a 3-time NWA North American title holder. He's actually mixing up 2 different belts there. The North American title with the USA Championship Wrestling title, which Harris held twice. A match from which we will be covering on Patreon in the next couple of weeks. Harris is pumped hitting the Fez press on Apollo, and while he's doing that, the Vampire Warrior comes in. The former Gangrel sneaks in and hits a suplex on Harris to curb his fire. I'll get my words out.
The Warrior. I'm a big fan of Chris Harris.
Yeah, he looks really good here. I think part of the trouble with the Battle Royal is you're just sort of introducing so many new faces at once that less established ones like Bryce Harris, there's only so much you can do to really stand out.
No, it's a good way. It's a good way to introduce a lot of people in a short amount of time.
I suppose, yeah. So the Vampire Warrior tries to eliminate Apollo. Harris tries to help get smacked in the head for his troubles, and Harris and the Warrior start pairing off. Next out is Devon Storm. He's the former Crowbar in WCW. I don't know him and Slash mixed up. My mistake there.
Yeah, no, Slash wasn't. I was actually going to correct you, but I just decided not to.
That's good to see you prepared to help me out there, pal.
Yeah, no problem. I didn't realize that Crowbar was also in the match. Slash was Wolfie D.
It was formerly someone else. I got that part right.
Yes, you did. Actually, the reason why I know that is because I recently realized that Crowbar was not part of the new church, and I was surprised about that because I thought he was.
Yeah, he does seem like someone that would sort of fit in with that gimmick.
It's a Mandela effect, I think.
Yeah. So Storm gets in the ring and goes at everyone basically. Face first suplex on Harris, Malice and Apollo pair off while Storm and Warrior lay into Harris. Scott Hall just takes a seat on the top rope and lets it all unfold in front of him until he gets bored and just starts wailing on people. Next out is Steve Corino. As Tanay noticed, he is the only former NWA champion in this match. We spoke about this last week, but they've really not gone with anyone from the previous few NWA title runs in this match at all outside of Corino. Random factoid.
Yeah, it's weird because you think Corino would last, but he really didn't. I feel like he wanted to focus on 0-1 and things like that, where he was more established. But I feel like if he would have stayed with TNA, he could have established himself as a bigger star in the United States.
Yeah, because he does.
I guess he did a lot of. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say he does crop up the next year. They do like a string like the New Church versus like old ECW guys. So he does a few shows while they're running that program. But yeah, other than that, he doesn't.
Yeah, he wasn't there for the long haul. But I do feel like I guess he did get some good momentum in Ring of Honor for a while. But that was later. That was like 2010, 2012.
Well, he appears in like early Ring of Honor until he gets written off when I think it's Homicide stabs him in the eye with a fork. Random factoid, in the dying days of WCW, they had put a freeze on hiring talent unless they basically were working a one-in, one-out system. And the person Corino replaced was the person who was entered in this match before he was, Devon Storm. So yeah, I've also got, I'm guessing Mike Rapada must be working a double shift at Starbucks just because he's an available NWA champion, but not in this match. So speaking of Devon Storm, Corino makes a beeline for him and ducks a punch and hits the Vampire with two, and the two trade off before Corino levels a pair of them with a clothesline. I've also got the Corino's punches here look incredible. I think they're the best looking punches in this match. Just throwing that out there.
Corino's good.
Yeah. James Mitchell stops his guy Malice from being eliminated by sort of pushing him through the middle ropes as he goes over. Number 19 is Ken Shamrock. No pausing to pose for the crowd. Head marches straight to the ring. Down goes Corino. Down goes Storm. Down goes the Vampire Warrior. All comes off worse trading punches and a nice power slam for Chris Harris. Malice finally stops Shamrock by catching him with a leg lariat and slamming him. Warrior thinks he has Harris out, but alas, Harris slides back in and works the Warrior over. And the final entrant in the Battle Royal is Brian Christopher. He starts wailing on Corino, then no sells an attack by Harris before dumping him. A low bridge gets Devon Storm out. He attempts it on the Vampire Warrior, but it takes a little extra to get him over for some reason. Corino tries his luck, but a trade-off ends with him getting dumped as well. Chokeslams Christopher. The other four guys surround him, leading Shamrock to chuck him out. Your final four are Apollo, Malice, Shamrock, and Hall. Apollo tried double teaming Malice, but the results in Apollo getting dumped. Hall goes for the edge, but Malice backdrops him as the camera cuts away for some reason, missing his elimination. So it took four people ganging up on Brian Christopher to beat him down. What are the thoughts on that?
They're really trying to make Brian Christopher look strong in this, and I mean, just listening to him talk, I guess was maybe the next episode. I don't know if he talked in this episode or not, but it just didn't seem like he was there. It didn't seem like he was good anymore. He was older and he moved kind of rough, and it seemed like it was a lot of work for him to even just talk. So I don't know. I wasn't behind the heavy push, but they're really trying to make him look strong here.
Yeah, because he's only in the match like quite short, but he eliminates, I think, was that four
I mean,
people
they
that
also
off
could have
there?
used him against Psychosis or something in the X division. I don't know.
Yeah, but
But they wanted him. He was like a top contender. He was like a world championship, a main eventer. They treated him as a main eventer, which I didn't never really believed in it.
yeah, I remember like when I was in college in like 2000 and it would have been like 5, 6 that I was looking up like some TNA stuff from uh online, and one of my friends was like, "Oh, what's that?" I was like, "Oh, it's some TNA stuff," and it sort of looked and sort of said, "Oh, Christian, what's he doing?" He's like, "Well, he's their champion." He's like, "Man, they really must suck if Christian's their champion."
Oh,
Which I mean, in 2006 is understandable, but you sort of think, well, yeah, but Christian was way above Grandmaster Sexy and Grandmaster. Like you say, they're pushing Christopher as a title contender here. It's just,
yeah. I mean, like we established though. I mean, at this point, they're just kind of they're picking up scraps from WCW's ashes, from the indie scene. At this point, WWF has anybody who's anybody.
that's true. Also, with it being a Southern promotion, you think it could just be a case of Jerry Jarrett is, still so sold on Jerry Lawler as the draw, because he's still the big draw in Memphis. He's just
Yeah,
like, you
yeah.
think
Plus, I
it's
mean,
just,
they're in Alabama, so they're in Jerry Lawler's home area. So why
yeah.
not try to establish Brian Christopher as a top contender? That too. Plus, on top of that, I could see Jerry Jarrett not trying to fly people in. So like all these people that are here are probably driving distance.
Well, like I said, well, they've not brought in all the former NWA champions, but most of those at this point are Japanese. So yeah, they definitely weren't going to be flying them in. We've discussed that Severin had another booking, which is one of the reasons, at least, why he's not on this show. Mike Rapada, that's an odd one, because that he was a local guy, but they were just like, no, we're good without him. Which I don't think harms the show in the slightest. Um, Down to pinfall and submission between Malice and Shamrock, and Steamboat jumps in to referee it. Malice tells Shamrock to bring it and meets him with a big boot. Shamrock tries to fight back, but eats a side slam for 2. Suplex gets 2. Shamrock tries for a sunset flip, but gets smacked in the face for his troubles. Malice picks up Shamrock for a chokeslam, but it's reversed into a cross arm breaker, which I didn't notice at first, but Shamrock did it on the wrong arm. It should have been, but that could just be because Malice picked him up with the wrong arm. I don't know. It's not really a fault though. I'm invested in this match enough. I'm going to prepare to let that slide. There is a big chant for Shamrock as Malice struggles to find the ropes while in the cross arm breaker, but Mitchell sort of helps drag him to the ropes. There was an old time rule that all cornermen keep off the matted area, and this is why. Malice works over Shamrock, selling his arm really well. He goes for a big kick, but Shamrock slaps on the ankle lock. Malice grabs the rope, but Shamrock grabs him back. Mitchell screams that the hold should be broken, and going by the old-timey rules, he's right. But Ricky allows it to continue. Again, Malice gets to the rope, and Shamrock breaks on the count of 7. A slow one at that. In fairness, Steamboat does get in Shamrock's face about this. It looks like he wants it. He doesn't want to end it on a DQ, which I guess is understandable. But still, there's why apply the count if you're not going to adhere to it. Shamrock kicks out the bad leg and starts choking Malice on the ropes. He's audibly calling something, too muffled to hear exactly what, but it's clearly instructions. He's yelling at Malice here. Shamrock eats a boot on a corner charge, and Malice sets up for the choke slam. Shamrock turns it into a belly to belly, and that is all she wrote. Shamrock is your new NWA champion. So, what did we think of the sort of final stretch there?
First of all, what's with the beard? Don't have that beard, okay? So my thought of this is, I hate to speak ill of the dead, But Malice was never any good. Malice was just big. And Ken Shamrock wasn't great. He was just kind of devastating. Everything he did looked kind of good and devastating. But he was very clunky in the ring. So these two guys, they didn't have a great match. And I feel like the first contender that Ken Shamrock defeated should have been somebody who could have led him a little more in the dance, maybe a Jeff Jarrett or I don't know, somebody else though. But it was okay. It got Ken Shamrock over. It established what they wanted to establish.
I mean, I'm not as down on Malice as you seem to. I think I just really enjoyed some of the stuff with the wall. It's the wall, brother.
Oh my gosh. Maybe I just hold that against him, but I can't take him seriously. Sergeant AWOL, like,
oh man, yeah. But yeah, he's not the person.
He's to me like he's on the level of a Van Hammer,
I mean, he did replace Van Hammer in that Misfits in Action group, didn't he?
That's what I'm saying.
But yeah,
I'm not a fan of Malice. Never really was. I just don't think he was that good.
Yeah, he's not the person to drag Shamrock to a sort of really memorable. I mean, I get what you're saying. This match isn't like particularly standout, but I feel it did sort of help establish Shamrock even with sort of Malice's limitations. It does,
yeah,
because he did
one plus is that he's bigger than Shamrock, so it made Shamrock look extra strong a little bit.
Yeah, and he did sell really well for a big guy. He actually made like the submission stuff look like it was really devastating. He sold the leg well on the ankle lock and the arm, and
he did sell well. I'll give him that. You're right.
Yeah. But yeah, Shamrock was the NWA champion. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. It's cool, I guess. I would like to see Dan Severn come and try to challenge him for it. But yeah, it was okay. Ken Shamrock was a champion. I feel like I wouldn't mind seeing him as WWF champion back in the day. So, Yeah,
I mean, I think there was a point where it looked like he could sort of go that way, but then the stars just didn't align, did they?
Somebody had the idea of booking the Montreal Screwjob. Somebody had the idea of booking Brett to lose the belt to Ken Shamrock on a Monday night, and then have Shamrock lose the belt to Shawn Michaels. I think that would have worked out a little better for everybody involved. But anyways, yeah, Ken Shamrock.
He's one of the most established names I've got. I think.
Yeah,
it's been nearly 2 years. It's been at least 2 years since he's been on TV. Yeah, I think there is still the interest there.
It did feel very like Ken Shamrock. Like what? Now that I think about it, you're right, because he wasn't established as a wrestler anymore at this point. It's like, didn't he leave wrestling?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I said last week about my thoughts on the way they took it off Severn when they could have built up a challenger and then bring Severn in. But you also said
there's going to be a gauntlet for the gold, and the winner faces Severn tonight, and then Shamrock wins, and that would have been epic, right?
Yeah, but apparently, according to Jerry Jarrett's book, Shamrock wasn't interested in that happening. That seems to be part of the reason why. Yeah. Another reason being Jarrett just didn't think it would draw yet in a couple of weeks'
Jarrett
time.
On the podcast was very against Dan Severn. I don't know why.
Yeah, he was like, I don't think it'll draw, but in the same vein, he thought Shamrock versus Malice would be a match that would draw, I think, in like 3 weeks' time. And we can't comment too much on that because it's really hard to get hold of any sort of numbers for TNA shows.
The ones that we do know of in the beginning were lies.
Yeah. Right. So immediately following that, Ferrara makes a comment about how fighting Shamrock is like running in the Special Olympics that was crude back then and has really aged horribly. So I'm not going to repeat it.
Yeah, you shouldn't repeat that.
Yeah, today says that's in bad taste, and he looks really upset with him at this point, and I can't say I blame him. So Jarrett shows up again in the back, yelling at Fargo and Toby Keith, who are being held back by security, and comes out into the arena runs down the Battle Royal on the mic again, pretty much the same we did at the start of the show, and starts getting in the face of the legends at ringside before striking Bullet Bob and Dory Funk, but leaving Harley Race alone because he's no fool. Keith and Fargo come out, followed by security, and Fargo announces that Jarrett will face Scott Hall at the next show, and Hall runs out to brawl with Jeff Jarrett as the show goes off the air. So we have a big crowning of a champion, and we go off the air with a battle between Jeff Jarrett and Scott Hall. What are your thoughts about that?
I feel like they should have established Jeff Jarrett and Scott Hall more in the Battle Royal, and then they should have ended the show with Ken Shamrock raising the belt in the air.
Yeah, I mean, I get, wanted, because this is not like
it felt very like, what's going to happen? There's chaos. Run out of time. Like they were trying to get the Nitro, but they were trying too hard.
Yeah, it's one of those things. The trouble with them doing it as all pay-per-views is you expect a pay-per-view to kind of end a certain way. You don't expect it to end on like a Nitro cliffhanger. But because of the nature of them not having the TV,
you can do that. You can do cliffhangers, but not on the first night.
Yeah.
On the first night, it's Ken Shamrock. It's the fanfare. It's fireworks. It's confetti, whatever. It's people coming out. It's maybe his family in the ring. Like, it's fun. It's happy. Woohoo. We did this. We had our first show.
Yeah, I mean, at least if you're going to do like an angle to end it, at least do it to build up to Shamrock's next challenger. It seems like they're kind of undermining him for the go home to be
that too. I agree.
To be a different program completely.
It's like he's your champion, but this is still the Jeff Jarrett show.
Yeah. So, with that done, I've got to ask you: what are your thoughts on this show? Is it
the biggest event the sport has ever seen,
or is it
just bowling shoe ugly?
Those are your two options. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I mean, it's monumental because it's the first TNA show, and they're still going to this day. And they've had so many good moments and so many incredible things. And I'm a sucker for a Royal Rumble type of match, and I really enjoyed that. I did. As much as I said that this show has been very lowbrow, and they've had very lowbrow things for most of the show, I think the Battle Royal made up for it. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a greatest night in the history of our great sport.
Yeah, it's hard. It is kind of hard because there is just so much stuff on here that's just, what were they doing? But they really. Did you know the Gauntlet for the Gold is the third longest match that TNA have ever done up to this point?
Up to the first show?
Up to now. This is the third longest.
Yeah, but even up to this. That was the third longest match they've ever had in the history of the show. Like, that was their first show.
Yeah, so they've only done two that have been longer. One's a big, so one is another Gauntlet for the Gold they did in 2017. That's the longest they've ever done.
Well, really? I gotta go find that.
Yeah, so that ran 52 minutes 25, and then you had a match at the Hardy Compound in 2016.
Does that count though? Does that count?
I don't know if it. Well,
I don't count it. It's cinematic.
It's a tag team title match,
but they can take breaks.
Yeah, I know, right? But the match that aired was 44 minutes long, so it does put it longer than this one. But
wow. Didn't they have a match that was an entire episode of Impact? I feel like that happened once.
Not on the stats I've shown here.
Okay, yeah, it was later on, I think, but I don't know. I feel like I remember that, and there was a match that was an entire episode of Impact, but I could have been wrong on that.
Yeah, so
there has to be. I'm gonna look that up real quick. Let me ask you a question. What do you think of the concept of the Royal Rumble with the last two competitors having a singles match?
See, I do like when you have like the Royal Rumble matches and you have like the long match sequences at the end, with like the one that sticks out most for me is like Undertaker Shawn. I think in 2007, I really enjoyed that. And if they'd have said, "Oh no, this is going to have to end in a pinfall from here," I think that would have been a great sort of precursor to the WrestleMania match they had 2 years later. I like that they're trying to make it their own thing, and it's not like something ridiculous. Like we'll go into like the King of the Mountain match, I think in about 18 months' time, and there is elements of that I think work, but all of the elements together I think is too much at once. But this is just a simple change that's like, no, that sort of works in that context, because I mean, like traditionally battle royals you could win by pinfall. So just be just as kind of like an almost a throwback to those days, being like, well, not everyone is going to be pinned in this, but the last person is. You at least kind of feel, the person who's won the title has won it in a proper match.
Yeah, right. Like that kind of takes away what Jeff Jarrett was saying about it not being fair, because you don't win the belt by throwing somebody over the top rope. You actually have to get the pinfall.
Yeah.
Submission or whatever. So real quick here, so Kurt Angle, Christian Cage, and Rhino had a triple threat match that lasted an entire episode of Impact. June 28th, 2007. But this video is 42 minutes, so it was the fourth longest match in TNA history.
No, I do not have that in my. Oh, hang on a minute. I do have that here. That is match number 10. That ran 30 minutes, 15 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So it's in the top 10, but only just. So for this one, we're both giving it
the biggest event the sport has ever seen.
I mean, that's stretching it a little, but would you say it's fair we both agree that there are some strong steps made on this show that they can sort of go forward with, that's possibly kept them in business for the last 20 years? Even if there were...
I mean, I feel like there was some things kind of established that they went with for the rest of the time, and some ideas and things like that. And I feel like this was the beginning of what they did and what they accomplished. And there's a lot of not pretty and a lot of not well thought out things here, but it was also the start of something that was great.
We said earlier about how they needed to, how rearranging the card at the start would have been a better start, but outside circumstances stopped that from happening, as we will discuss next week. So going with Hall versus Jarrett on the show next week, do you think that's a strong match to sort of try and lead people in?
I think so. I think especially just because Scott Hall was so hot coming off of his WWF run that was just happened, like he was just there. And so I feel like that's a strike while the fire's hot, or whatever they say.
Yeah, I mean, because people are always happy to see Scott Hall. Unfortunately, at this time, he was not always in the best sort of state of mind. But...
it was definitely downhill a lot from here. He went way downhill. He got really bad. But people always wanted Scott Hall to come out of this. And he did. And, he passed away, but I feel like he's the winner because he was able to. There's a lot of people who have substance abuse issues that don't get to come out the other side. And I feel like, he passed away, but he could have passed away as a drunk, but he didn't. He got past it. And that's tremendous. And that's incredible for him. I know that's not really what we're talking about, but good for him, Yeah,
it's sad that, he sort of was finally seemed to be so much happier in like those last few years. And he just he just kind of wished that, he had more time to sort of enjoy himself. But
I'm just glad he had any time at this point, because like he could have died in 2006 and then his legacy would have been, oh yeah, he was a drug person, he was this, whatever.
Yeah,
but like we all got to see him come out of it. We all got to see him come to the side. His family, himself, Jake's on the other side of it. Like, good for them.
Yeah, whoever saw sort of Jake sort of, getting to the stage that he's at now, it was especially like watching like Beyond the Mat. Just the fact that he's still here is amazing.
Yeah. Shout out to DDP.
Yeah, Paige, you are truly doing some amazing work down there in Florida. Yeah, so that's that wrapped for this week. So yeah, and until next week. You got anything before we go? You got anything you want to plug? Any sort of shows or anything?
No,
coming
not
up?
really. I mentioned in my show, I have a lot of cool podcasts. You can find them at hypotheticalcomedy.com. I interview some awesome indie wrestlers. The newest one is Matthias. He's a you may not have heard of him, but he has a cool story. So check it out. But yeah, no, nothing new, nothing really that's going on. Just follow those podcasts.
Okay. Yeah, for all my stuff, facebook.com/el.j.comedy. It's all up there. And yeah, you can check out all the podcast stuff at ETATNA Pod on all the social medias except Facebook, where it's ETATNA Pod 1.
Heck yeah. I really enjoy this concept. So I do want to say before we stop for the day, I do appreciate just you coming up with it. You do a lot of research and you bring up a lot of like how the audio issues and things like that. So you bring up a lot of good details and stuff. So thank you for the what you're putting in for this.
Yeah, I mean, after I sort of said like 3 things that blew your mind in the last one, I'm talking now. That's now kind of a goal for me to beat. Seeing how many times I can just make you go, "Wow, I did not know that" in one hit.
Nice. We should have a counter.
Yeah, I mean, once we start getting a following, I'm sure there'll be someone who'll actually be prepared to sort of provide us with one. Before we go, I just want to say we will be hanging about on Patreon. So if you're a part of our Patreon, you can check out as we do our post-game analysis, what we thought of how this show holds up as of today in 2024. I guess until next time, he's been Sam, I've been LJ. It's been emotional. Escaping the Asylum, a look at the history of NWA TNA, has been a Smart Alex production. It's been presented by Elliot James and Funky Sam and has been edited and produced by Adam Gray.